Hello guys, welcome to Phoenix What If. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto became God Emperor of Shinobi World and got Harem of Kage-Level Kunoichi? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Unification. The wind carried the scent of wet stone and sawdusted timber across the high plateau. From his vantage point on the unfinished balcony of the central spire, Naruto Uzumaki could see the entirety of his new world taking shape. Below him, the imperial capital sprawled, a city born from the ashes of Orochimaru's cruelest ambitions. The land of sound, once a festering wound on the continent, was now the heart of a unified shinobi world. Its jagged peaks and shadowy valleys were being tamed, carved into districts and boulevards, the raw rock giving way to the stark, functional beauty of a new era. He rested his hands on the cool, unpolished marble of the balustrade, the legendary black receiver rods embedded in his palms retracting silently into his skin. The Rinnegan in his right eye, a ripple of celestial purple, saw the flow of chakra throughout the valley, the steady, earth-moving exertions of Iwa shinobi, the precise, water-shaping techniques of Kiri artisans, the liquor of Konoha medical ninjutsu knitting bone and sinew on a construction worker who had slipped. It was a symphony of cooperation, a harmony he had bled and fought and died to create. Peace. It was heavier than he had imagined. It wasn't a gentle calm, but a crushing weight of responsibility, 1,000 fragile threads of trust and fear and hope, all held in his hands. Every life, every village, every dream, now looked to him. The God Emperor. The title felt both alien and inevitable. A soft click of heels on the stone behind him announced her arrival. He didn't need to turn. The scent of spring mist and a hint of acidic cherry blossom tea told him it was Materumi. The daimyo of the Land of Fire is requesting another audience, she said, her voice a sultry, melodic purr that could sow off a raging beast or deliver a death sentence with equal grace. She came to stand beside him, her long, auburn hair swaying. She had traded her Mizukage robes for the deep blue and silver attire of the imperial court. But the change did nothing to diminish the dangerous glint in her green eyes. He feels his traditional authority is being undermined by the new trade tariffs. Naruto let out a sigh. The sound lost in the vastness of the valley. His traditional authority involved skimming nearly 40% of Konoha's mission revenue for his own coffers while the village struggled. He's lucky I let him keep his fancy hat. Mei's lips curved into a wry smile. He also included a rather generous proposal for his fourth daughter's betrothal. To you, of course. A political alliance to solidify the relationship between the old court and the new. My relationship with the fire daimyo is perfectly solid, Naruto said, turning to face her. He stays in his palace, enjoys his wealth, and doesn't interfere with shinobi affairs. If he pushes, the relationship will become solid in a different way. Like a rock, dropped on his palace. Mei laughed, a genuine, throaty sound. I'll be sure to communicate your reservations. Gently, of course. Her smile faded slightly as she studied his face. You haven't slept, have you? Your shadow clones can oversee the construction, Naruto. You are no longer a genin trying to master a single jutsu. Some things a clone can't do, he murmured, his gaze drifting back to the city. They can't feel the weight of it. They can't see the cracks. He tapped his temple, where the faint pattern of his Sage of Six Paths mode sometimes felt etched into his very skull. I can sense it all, Mei. Every pocket of resentment, every whisper of rebellion, the fear that this is just another dictatorship, trading one set of warlords for another. It is a dictatorship, Mei stated, her tone devoid of judgment, a simple acceptance of fact. A benevolent one, perhaps. A necessary one, certainly. But you hold all the power. Do not fool yourself into thinking they love you for it. They respect the power. They fear it. Love will have to be earned, day by day, decision by decision. He nodded slowly. She was right. She was always right. It was why he had made her his chief advisor, his voice of reason when his own instincts screamed for him to just eat 10,000 clones and solve every problem with overwhelming force. Then let's make some decisions, he said, turning from the balcony. Call the council. We have work to do. The council chamber was a marvel of engineering. A circular room deep within the spire, its walls fashioned from wood grown in Konoha and stone quarried from Iowa, all fused seamlessly by Suna's magnet-style users. A single, round table of polished obsidian dominated the center, with no head, signifying a theoretical equality that everyone present knew was a polite fiction. All eyes turned to Naruto as he entered. Tsunade Senju, the fifth Hokage and his mentor, sat with her arms crossed, her expression a familiar mix of pride and exasperation. Age had barely touched her, but the years of war and loss had left a permanent mark on her soul, visible in the depths of her brown eyes. Next to her, Kuretsuchi of Iwagakure, the Tsuchikage, lounged in her seat with a practiced air of indifference, one leg casually slung over the other. Her short black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes missed nothing. She was a cynic by nature and a pragmatist by necessity, her loyalty to Naruto forged not in sentiment, but in the cold calculus of survival for her village. Opposite them sat Konan, the angel of Omegakure. Clad in a simple, dark robe, her face was serene, almost impassive, but Naruto could feel the storm of chalk, raw and paper that lay just beneath her skin, an ocean of deadly origami ready to be unleashed at her command. She had turned her back on the Akatsuki's dream of forced peace and now used her vast intelligence network to preserve his. The daimyo are restless, Naruto began, taking his seat. He didn't bother with pleasantries. They had moved beyond them. Mei informs me the fire daimyo is testing the boundaries again. Tsunade snorted. He's a pampered fool. He'll fall in line once the next tribute shipment is delayed by unforeseen logistical complications. A gentle touch is required. For now, Mei countered smoothly. The feudal lords still command the loyalty of the civilian populace. We cannot afford to make martyrs of them. A gradual erosion of their power is more effective than a public decapitation. Kuretsuchi finally spoke, her voice laced with gravelly amusement. My grandfather would have just buried him under a mountain and been done with it. Simpler times. Your grandfather's methods are why we needed a unification in the first place, Naruto said, his gaze meeting hers. A flicker of something, challenge, respect, passed between them. But she's right. For now, we bleed them of influence. Reroute trade through shinobi-controlled ports. Establish our own currency. Make them obsolete relics. But that's a slow burn. Konan, what's the immediate fire? Konan's blue eyes focused on him. A supply convoy was attacked yesterday, on the border between the land of earth and the land of grass. It was carrying medical supplies and seed grain for the new settlements near Iwagakure. The shipment was destroyed. 12 guards, all shinobi from Kumo, were killed. A chill fell over the room. It was the first major act of aggression since the end of the Fourth Great Ninja War. Bandits? Tsunade asked, her voice sharp. No, Konan replied, placing a single sheet of paper on the table. A security seal was sketched onto it. The attack was too precise. They targeted the lead and rear wagons simultaneously, disabling the entire convoy before the guards could mount a defense. The bodies were left with this. Naruto looked at the image. It was a stylized symbol of a clenched fist inside a craggy mountain. Kuretsuchi sat up straight, her casual demeanor vanishing. The Iowa Loyalist Front, a fringe group, old fools who still think the world should be carved up into 5 warring nations. They see my allegiance to you as a betrayal of Iowa's pride. Her fists clenched. Gansaki. It has to be him. He was one of my father's most trusted Jonin commanders. A traditionalist, stubborn as the mountains he was born in. He's more than a traditionalist now, Konan said flatly. My sources indicate he's amassed a following of several hundred veteran Iowa shinobi who were displaced or refused to swear fealty to the new regime. They're well funded and operating out of the Tsushigumo mountain range. Then we send a legion, Tsunade declared. The 1st and 2nd Imperial divisions are ready. We make an example of them. A swift, brutal message that this new peace has teeth. No, Naruto said, his voice quiet but absolute. The room fell silent. An army marches on Iowa soil, even under our banner. And it looks like an occupation. It validates Gansaki's entire ideology. It tells the people of the land of earth that their Tsuchikage is a puppet and I am a conqueror. He looked directly at Kuretsuchi. This is a matter for Iwagakure. But it is a threat to the entire world. So we will handle it together. He stood up. Kuretsuchi, You and I will go. We will take a small contingent of your own Anbu. We will cut the head off this snake, and we will do it in a way that shows the people of Iwa that this is their strength, their cage, protecting them, with the support of the emperor, not at his command." Quote. Kuretsuchi stared at him, her dark eyes wide with surprise. She had expected him to send his own forces, to assert his dominance. This was different. This was a gesture of profound political trust. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "All right, Lord Emperor," she drawled, the title sounding both mocking and strangely genuine. "Let's go remind why people what happens when they mistake tradition for progress. But if you slow me down, I'm leaving you behind." "You can try," Naruto replied, a grin of his own tugging at his lips. The air in the room crackled with energy. The first test of his reign was here, and he would meet it not with an army, but with a promise. The flight to the land of Earth was a silent testament to Naruto's power. He didn't need an airship or a summoning animal. He simply flew, suspended in the air by the mastery of his six paths power, a golden aura shimmering around him. Kuretsuchi was beside him, supported on a platform of rock she expertly manipulated, keeping pace with him as the landscape blurred below. Her 10 Anbu, clad in their traditional Iwa gear, followed on a larger, communal platform. They had been traveling for hours. The lush greens of the central lands giving way to the harsh, unforgiving ochre and brown of the land of Earth. Giant, stone mesas clawed at the sky, their surfaces weathered by millennia of wind and rain. "You're quiet," Naruto observed, breaking the silence. Having second thoughts, Kuretsuchi shot him a sideways glance. "I'm thinking this is a hell of a risk. You, the God Emperor, on a field mission. If something happens to you, then you'll have a much bigger problem on your hands than some disgruntled traditionalists," he finished. "But nothing is going to happen. You know why? Because we're not going to fail. Confidence. It's a good look on you," she admitted, a hint of grudging respect in her tone. "But Ganseki is no fool. He commanded the Iwa front lines for 20 years. He knows every canyon, every cave, every trick the terrain has to offer. He's fighting on his home ground." "Good," Naruto said simply. "Then he'll be comfortable. Comfortable people make mistakes." She studied him, her head tilted. "You really believe this, don't you? This whole peace thing, you think you can just will it into existence?" "I have to," he said, his voice losing its light-hearted edge. "I've seen the alternative. I've walked through the ashes of it. I've held my friends as they died in it. This peace thing is the only path forward. Anyone who stands in the way of it is standing in the way of survival." His conviction was a palpable force, as real as the wind whipping past them. Kuretsuchi found herself looking away, a strange warmth spreading through her chest. It was infuriating. She was the Tsuchikage, a master of political maneuvering and hard-nosed reality. She wasn't supposed to be swayed by idealistic speeches. But there was nothing idealistic about Naruto. He spoke of peace with the grim certainty of a man who had paid for it with his own blood. They made camp as dusk fell, finding shelter in a deep ravine carved by an ancient river. The Iwa Anbu set up a perimeter with practiced efficiency, their Earth-style jutsu creating fortified walls and watchtowers in minutes. Naruto and Kuretsuchi sat by a small, smokeless fire, the silence between them more comfortable now. He was tending to a small cut on his arm, a minor injury from a construction accident he hadn't bothered to heal immediately. He simply held his palm over it, and green chakra seeped into the wound, knitting the skin back together. "You could just let one of Tsunade's medics handle that," she pointed out. "It's good to remember what it feels like," he said, flexing his hand. "Keeps me grounded." He looked up at her. "Tell me about Ganseki." "Not the soldier. The man." Kuretsuchi stared into the fire, her expression unreadable. "He was my father's friend. He taught me my first Earth-style jutsu. He believed in Iwa. Not the village, not the people, but the idea of Iwa. The unmoving will of stone. He saw compromise as weakness, alliance as submission. When my Gr. and father stepped down and I took the mantle, he respected it because it was our way. But when I knelt before you, when I pledged Iwagakure to a unified world, he saw it as the ultimate betrayal. In his mind, you are a foreign invader. And I am the traitor who opened the gates. So he's fighting for what he loves," Naruto mused. He's fighting for a memory, she corrected him. And he's willing to kill for it. She finally met his eyes, a grim fire in her own. There's no reasoning with him, Naruto. Don't think for a second that you're famous. Talk no jutsu is going to work here. He will have to be put down. We'll see, Naruto said softly. Every fight is a conversation. Let's see what he has to say. The next morning, Konan's intelligence proved flawless. They found Ganseki's Fortress E. Exactly where she had said it would be. A series of interconnected caves high on the face of a sheer cliff, accessible only by a narrow, treacherous path. It was a classic Iwa defensive position, Virtu. Ally unassailable by a conventional force. He'll have the path trapped, Kuretsuchi said, studying the cliff face. Explosive tags, rockfalls, the works. A frontal assault is suicide. Who said anything about a frontal assault? Naruto asked, a familiar, foxy grin spreading across his face. He held up a hand. A colossal sphere of swirling chakra, a recentricon of immense size and power, formed above him. Roaring like a captive hurricane. He didn't throw it at the fortress. Instead, he hurled it upwards, into the sky directly above the cliff. The explosion was blinding. It didn't destroy anything on the ground. But it shredded the clouds, altering the air pressure in an instant. A massive downdraft slammed into the mountainside. Now, Naruto said, grabbing Kuretsuchi's arm as he leapt from the edge of the ravine. The Iwa Anbu followed without hesitation. Instead of falling, they were caught by the violent, downward gust of wind, which Naruto was now expertly manipulating with his own chakra. Turning a suicidal plunge into a controlled, high-speed descent right towards the mouth of Ganseki's main cave. The Iwa loyalists were in chaos. They had prepared for an attack from below, not from the heavens themselves. Naruto and Kuretsuchi landed first, a whirlwind of motion and power. Naruto moved like a golden blur, his truth-seeking orbs forming a defensive shield around him that negated any ninjutsu thrown his way. He wasn't killing. A precise jab here, a swift kick there, and his opponents were left unconscious, their chakra points sealed. Kuretsuchi was a different story. She was death and destruction. A force of nature, lava style. Scorch flow boulder jutsu. She yelled, spewing torrents of molten rock that hardened into massive projectiles, sealing cave entrances and blocking reinforcements. Her movements were economical and brutal, every action designed to maim or neutralize. Together, they were an unstoppable tide, sweeping through the outer defenses of the fortress. They burst into the central cavern to find Ganseki waiting. He was a mountain of a man, his face a roadmap of old scars, his Iwa headband worn and frayed. He stood before a group of younger, terrified-looking shinobi. So, the tyrant comes himself, Ganseki boomed, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. And he brings the Iwa traitor with him. It's over, Ganseki, Kuretsuchi snarled. Surrender. Don't make me kill a man I once called uncle. You are no niece of mine, he spat. You have spat on the graves of our ancestors, on the very stone of this land. You have sold our pride for a pretty cage. I bought our future, she retorted, her hands flashing through signs. Enough, Naruto said, his voice cutting through the tension. He stepped forward, his golden aura flaring, the pressure in the room skyrocketing. The younger shinobi behind Ganseki trembled, some falling to their knees. Ganseki, you believe you are fighting for Iwa's freedom. But you are chaining it to the past. This world I am building, it's not a cage. It's a foundation. A place where an Iwa shinobi can walk in Kumo without being killed on sight. A place where your children won't have to be sent to die. A pointless border skirmish over a patch of useless dirt. Lies. Ganseki roared, stomping his foot. The entire cavern shook. Words are the weapons of deceivers. A true shinobi of Iwa speaks with his fists. He charged, his body encased in a thick armor of stone. Earth style. Tectonic slam. He moved with surprising speed for his size, his fist cocked back, radiating an immense amount of chakra. Naruto didn't move, he simply raised a hand. A massive, spectral golden arm, made of pure chakra, erupted from his back. It was larger than Ganseki, a divine construct of overwhelming power. It met Ganseki's punch with casual ease. The shockwave blew everyone else in the room off their feet. The stone armor around Ganseki shattered into a million pieces. The old shinobi stared, his eyes wide with disbelief. at the golden hand holding his fist, completely immobilizing him. You speak with your fist, Naruto said, his voice calm, yet resonating with absolute power. And your fist is telling me you are afraid. You're afraid of change. You're afraid of a world you don't understand. He pushed, gently. Gansaki was thrown backward, tumbling through the air before crashing into the far wall of the cavern, which cracked and groaned under the impact. He slumped to the ground, defeated. Naruto walked towards him, the golden aura receding. He stood over the broken man, not with triumph, but with a profound sadness in his eyes. You have a choice, Naruto said, his voice echoing in the stunned silence. You can cling to your pride and your hatred, and I will seal you away in a place where you can harm no one else. Or, you can open your eyes, see the world as it is, and help me build the future. Lend Iwa your strength. Teach the next generation what it truly means to have an unmoving will, not the will to resist change, but the will to endure, to adapt, and to build something that lasts. He extended his hand. Gansaki stared at the offered hand, then at Kuretsuchi, who was watching. Her expression a mixture of awe and uncertainty. He saw the faces of the young shinobi he had led to this disastrous end. He saw the pity in the God Emperor's eyes. And in that moment, the mountain of his pride finally crumbled into dust. Slowly, painfully, he reached out and took Naruto's hand. The return to the imperial capital was marked by a newfound sense of ease. Kuretsuchi, having seen Naruto's power and his mercy firsthand, had dropped her cynical guard. The flight back was filled not with silence, but with conversation. They talked of strategy, of politics, of the future, and even, cautiously, of themselves. A bond had been forged in the heart of the Iwa Mountains, a connection of mutual respect that felt dangerously close to something more. They arrived late in the evening. The central spire was aglow with chakra-fueled lights, a beacon of progress in the deepening twilight. Mei was waiting for them on the balcony, a pot of tea and 3 cups set on a small table. She smiled as they landed, her gaze taking in their disheveled state and the easy camaraderie between them. I trust the diplomatic mission was a success, she asked, her voice rich with amusement as she poured the tea. You could call it that, Kuretsuchi said, gratefully accepting a cup. She took a sip and leaned against the balustrade, looking out at the city. He's infuriatingly convincing, you know. I am aware, Mei said, handing a cup to Naruto. Their fingers brushed, a brief, electric touch. It is his most dangerous quality. Naruto took a long drink, the warm tea soothing the raw edges of the day. He stood between the two women. The cool, pragmatic Tsuchikage on his left, the warm, sharp-witted former Mizukage on his right. For the first time in a long time, the crushing weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. Shared between 3 pairs of capable hands, peace felt less like a burden and more like a possibility. We were lucky, he said quietly. Gansaki chose reason over pride. The next one might not. Then we will deal with the next one, Mei said simply. And the one after that. That is the job. As if summoned by her words, a flicker of movement in the shadows resolved itself into the form of Conan. She moved with preternatural silence, a ghost of paper and purpose. Her face was as serene as ever, but Naruto could sense the urgency humming beneath her calm exterior. Forgive the intrusion, she said, her voice a low whisper. We finished analyzing the intelligence recovered from Gansaki's fortress. Most of it was logistical, troop movements, supply caches. But we found this. She held out a small, rolled-up scroll. It was ancient, the parchment brittle and yellowed with age. Naruto took it and carefully unfurled it. It was not a map of the shinobi nations. The geography was alien, depicting stars and celestial bodies in formations he had never seen. It was a star chart. In the center of the scroll, written in a cramped, archaic script, was a single word. A name. Kuretsuchi and Mei leaned in to look. What is it? Kuretsuchi asked, frowning at the strange map. Naruto's blood ran cold. He had seen that script before, in the fading memories inherited Fr. Om Hagoromo and in the dying thoughts of Kagaya. It was the language of the celestial travelers, the progenitors of chakra. His eyes focused on the single word. A chill, deeper and more profound than any winter wind, swept over the balcony. This was not a problem he could solve with a Rasengan or a heartfelt speech. This was the echo of a threat beyond nations, beyond wars, beyond his entire world. Otsutsuki, he read aloud. His voice barely a whisper. The name hung in the air, a harbinger of the true storm that was yet to come. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Whispers of the Void. The obsidian table felt like a slab of frozen night. The ancient, brittle scroll lay in its center, a fragile piece of history radiating a palpable sense of menace that dwarfed any worldly concern. The name Naruto had spoken, Otsutsuki, still hung in the air. A poison that had silenced even the most formidable women in the shinobi world. Tsunade was the first to break. She pushed herself away from the table, the legs of her chair scraping harshly against the stone floor. Otsutsuki, she repeated, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. The clan of the rabbit goddess. Kage, I thought she was the last of them. I thought that threat was ended. She was the progenitor of chakra on this world, Naruto said, his eyes never leaving the star chart. The Rinnegan in his right eye seemed to trace the celestial pathways on the scroll. Seeing more than simple lines and symbols. But she wasn't the last. They are a clan of parasites. They travel from world to world, planting a god tree, harvesting its fruit, and draining the planet of all life before moving on. This world was just one of their gardens. The weight of his words settled on them. Kuritsuchi, who had faced down armies and monsters of earth and stone, felt a tremor of a fear she hadn't known since she was a child. You're saying, there are more of them. Out there, she gestured vaguely towards the ceiling. And this scroll was in Gansaki's possession? Mei asked, her mind racing through the political and strategic implications. How? What does a traditionalist from Iowa have to do with celestial gods? That is the question, Conan said, her voice a placid, chilling calm. The scroll was not his. Our analysis of his communications suggests it was given to him by a benefactor, someone who funded his rebellion. Someone who wanted to destabilize the land of Earth. For what purpose? Tsunade demanded. To what end? To keep us busy, Naruto answered, finally looking up. His gaze was hard, his youthful features sharpened by the gravity of a cosmic understanding. To keep us fighting amongst ourselves while they prepare. This wasn't just a rebellion. It was a distraction. He saw the skepticism in Tsunade's eyes, the practical leader warring with the evidence before her. He knew words were not enough. I need you to see, he said, rising from his chair. I need you to understand what we're facing. He placed a hand on the table. Don't resist, just observe. Before any of them could react, his chakra, vast and overwhelming, washed over them. It wasn't an attack, it was an invitation. He opened a channel, sharing a sliver of the memories he had inherited from Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of six paths himself. The world dissolved. For a heart-stopping second, they were not in a council chamber but adrift in a black, star-strewn void. They saw worlds, vibrant and teeming with life, suddenly wither and turn gray. They saw the monstrous, ten-tailed Jubi in its purest form, a seedling of the god tree. They saw the cold, impassive faces of other Otsutsuki, horned, pale-skinned beings with eyes that held the emptiness of space, observing the death of a planet with the detached interest of farmers reaping a harvest. The images were fleeting, fragmented. But the emotion they carried was absolute, a cold, consuming dread. The shinobi world was not a home. It was a crop. The vision shattered, and they were back in the chamber, gasping for breath. Kuritsuchi was gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Mei had a hand pressed to her chest, her face pale. Even Tsunade, who had seen more death and destruction than anyone alive, looked shaken to her core. That is what's coming. Kuritsuchi whispered. That is what has always been coming, Naruto corrected her. We've just been too busy fighting over the fence posts to notice the hurricane on the horizon. Tsunade slammed her fist on the table, the obsidian cracking under the force of her monstrous strength. Damn it, we finally achieve peace, and now you're telling me we have to prepare for an invasion from the stars. It explains Kage's actions, Conan mused, her analytical mind already processing the new data. Her creation of the White Zetsu army was not for conquest. It was to build a defense against their return. A flawed defense built on a foundation of tyranny, Mei added, her composure returning. We cannot afford to make the same mistake. Panic is our enemy now. If word of this gets out, the fragile trust we have built will shatter. Every nation will retreat, hoard its resources, and we will be back to where we started." "She's right," Naruto agreed. "This stays in this room. We handle this covertly. Conan, I want every scrap of information your network has on ancient ruins, celestial phenomena, anything that was dismissed as myth or folklore. Re-examine it all through this new lens." Conan nodded, a single, determined gesture. "Kuritsuchi," Naruto continued, "your people are the masters of stonework and mining. I want you to begin secret excavations of major historical sites, starting with the ruins in the Land of Wind. Look for anything that doesn't fit our known history." The Tsuchikage's eyes hardened with purpose. "I'll dispatch my best teams." Quote, "Mei, Tsunade," he said, turning to the last two. "You and I will handle the political front. We need to accelerate the unification of our military forces. A single, cohesive army. Use whatever pretext is necessary. Trade disputes, bandit suppression, but we need our shinobi ready to fight as one, without them knowing who the real enemy is." The orders were given with a quiet authority that left no room for argument. The shock had passed, replaced by the grim determination of leaders facing a crisis. "What about you?" Mei asked, her gaze fixed on him. "What is your role in this?" A strange light flickered in Naruto's eyes. "I need to consult an older, wiser voice. There are gaps in Hagoromo's memories, things even he didn't fully understand. I'm going to see an old friend." The air in the Shikatsu forest was thick and heavy, saturated with the smell of damp earth, strange pollens, and a subtle, clean scent like fresh rain. Giant, bone-white pill. Ars of unknown material rose like skeletal trees, and the ground was a soft, spongy moss that seemed to absorb all sound. It was a place outside of time, brimming with a quiet, ancient life force. Naruto walked alone, the usual hum of the world silenced by the forest's oppressive tranquility. He wasn't here as the God Emperor, but as a sage seeking counsel. He needed knowledge that couldn't be found in scrolls or interrogation rooms. He came to a vast clearing. In its center lay a creature so immense it was less an animal and more a living piece of geography. Katsuyu, the slug queen, her body a glistening, white expanse larger than the Hokage monument, regarded him with a dozen of her myriad eyes. Naruto-kun, her voice echoed, not through the air, but directly in his mind, a chorus of 1,000 gentle voices speaking as one. "It has been long. The world has changed. We feel the shift, even here." "Katsuyu-sama," Naruto greeted her with a respectful bow. "I need your wisdom. I need tea. Oh, know what you remember of the time before Hagoromo. The time of the god tree's arrival." Katsuyu was silent for a long moment, the clearing still save for the gentle pulsing of her massive body. "Our memory is not like yours," she finally communicated. "We do not see time as a line. We feel it as a tide. We remember the great wound. A scar on the world's chakra. A thing that fell from the sky and drank from the planet's very soul. It was a time of terrible imbalance. Life itself cried out." "The Otsutsuki," Naruto said. "Do you know of them?" "The name is a whisper on a dying wind," Katsuyu's thoughts conveyed a sense of ancient sorrow. "They are the bringers of the wound. They do not belong. They take, but they do not give. They are a void in the great cycle. We sensed their echo in the woman you called Kagaya. A deep wrongness. There are more coming," Naruto told her, the admission feeling heavier here, in the heart of the world's life force. "Is there any way to fight them?" "A weakness. A knowledge that the sage of 6 paths might have missed. The sage was wise in the ways of chakra, but he was born of the wound itself," Katsuyu explained. "He saw chakra as a tool, a weapon, a bridge between hearts. He did not see it as we do. As the world's blood, its breath, its spirit. To fight the void, you must understand not just the power of the branch, but the strength of the root. The answer you seek is not in the sky, Naruto-kun. It is in the earth beneath your feet. It is in the life that the Otsutsuki seek to devour. You must learn to speak the world's language, not just your own." The cryptic advice settled within him, not as a clear plan, but as a new direction. He had focused on mastering the power he wielded, the legacy of the Otsutsuki. Perhaps the key was to stir the power they had sought to steal, the raw, untamed life force of the planet itself. The very essence of senjutsu, magnified 1,000 times over. He bowed once more, Thank you, Katsuyu-sama. You have given me a path. He returned to the capital to find the city buzzing with an energy that had nothing to do with construction. Armed guards stood in tight formation in the main plaza, their banners, a stylized whirlpool leaf. The symbol of the new unified regime, snapping in the wind. May met him on the landing platform of the central spire, her expression a careful blend of diplomacy and concern. You have visitors, she said, her voice low. An envoy arrived while you were gone. From across the Western Ocean. Naruto frowned. The lands across the ocean were blanks on their maps, places of myth. Who are they? They call themselves samurai, from a nation they call the Land of Iron, May explained, leading him inside. They are different. They use chakra, but not as we do. No ninjutsu. They channel it through their bodies and their blades. They are warriors, Naruto. And their leader is asking for an audience. In the grand receiving hall, a woman stood waiting. She was tall and lean, clad in stark, functional black and gray armor that was a masterpiece of articulated steel plates. A long, single-edged sword, a katana, was sheathed at her side. Her black hair was tied back in a severe ponytail, and her face was all sharp angles and sharper eyes. She radiated an aura of disciplined calm that was as formidable as any Kage's chakra cloak. You are the God Emperor? She asked, her voice clear and strong, without a trace of deference. I am Naruto Uzumaki, he replied, meeting her gaze. And you are? My name is Akane, she said, giving a short, crisp bow that was more a gesture of martial respect than submission. I am the general of the armies of the Land of Iron, and I speak for our shogun. We have watched you from afar. We have seen a continent of warring chill. Dren suddenly falls silent under the command of a single boy. We have come to see if this peace is the calm of a sleeping giant, or the stillness of a graveyard. It's the calm of a world that's tired of digging graves, Naruto said simply. Akane's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing him. Words are wind. A leader's will is not proven in speeches, but in the steel of their own spine. Your power is legendary. They say you can level mountains. But a mountain has no will. It can be shattered. I wish to measure you, Naruto Uzumaki. Not your power, not your title, your will. A murmur went through the assembled guards. May took a half step forward, ready to intervene. And how do you propose to do that? Naruto asked, a flicker of interest in his eyes. Akane's hand rested on the hilt of her katana. By the old way, a duel, no armies, no world-ending techniques, just you and me. Let me feel the strength of the man who would call himself emperor. It was a blatant challenge, a test of the highest order. May's mind flashed with the political ramifications. To refuse was to show weakness. To accept and use his full power would make him seem a brute to these newcomers. To lose was unthinkable. Naruto smiled, a genuine, excited smile that took Akane by surprise. It was the smile of a fighter who had been burdened by statecraft for too long. All right, Akane of the Land of Iron. You want to measure my will. Let's see if your sword is sharp enough to do it. They met in the central training ground, a vast, circular arena carved from the mountain itself. The duel was to be a simple one, the first. To be disarmed or admit defeat would lose. Kuretsuchi and May watched from the sidelines, their expressions tense. Akane drew her blade in a single, fluid motion. The steel seemed to hum in the air, a thin, almost invisible layer of white chakra coating its edge. She settled into a low stance, a perfect picture of deadly focus. Naruto didn't draw a weapon. He simply fell into the frog kata stance of Mount Myoboku. His body suffused with the potent energy of Sage Mode. Orange pigmentation appeared around his eyes. He wouldn't use the Six Paths power. This was a battle of skill, and he would honor her challenge. Akane moved. She was not just fast. She was economical. There was no wasted motion. She flowed across the arena like water, her blade a silver extension of her will. The clang of Saint Eel against flesh echoed through the arena as her chakra-infused katana met Naruto's forearm, which he had hardened with sage chakra. The impact sent a jolt up her arm. It was like striking granite. She leapt back, her eyes wide with surprise. Impressive. You use chakra as armor. You use it to sharpen a stick, Naruto countered, grinning. Let's see what else you've got. The fight became a blur. Akane was the aggressor, her swordsmanship a whirlwind of precise, deadly strikes aimed at every opening she could find. Naruto was the defender, a golden-orange blur of motion, weaving, parrying, and redirecting her attacks with his bare hands. He used the invisible energy of the frog Kata to extend his reach, turning her own momentum against her, sending her stumbling back more than once. He could have ended it in a second. A single Rasengan, a truth-seeking orb, it would have been over. But that wasn't the point. He had to win by her rules. He had to show her that his will, his skill, was superior even without the power of a god. Akane grit her teeth, frustrated. He was toying with her. He was faster, stronger, and his precognitive abilities in Sage Mode allowed him to anticipate her every move. She risked everything on a single, powerful thrust, pouring all her chakra into the tip of her blade. Naruto didn't dodge. He moved into the attack. At the last possible second, he slapped the flat of her blade with his open palm, the sage chakra disrupting the flow of her own. With his other hand, he chopped down precisely on her wrist. The katana flew from her grasp, spinning through the air before embedding itself deep into the stone wall of the arena, quivering from the force. Silence. Akane stood, her empty hand still tingling, her chest heaving. She was defeated, disarmed. She had thrown everything she had at him, and he had neutralized her without causing a single injury. Naruto stood before her, his sage mode receding. "Your will is strong, Akane," he said, his voice calm and respectful. "Your sword is sharp. The land of iron has a formidable protector." Akane stared at him, a complex mixture of shock, humiliation, and grudging admiration on her face. He had not just defeated her. He had shown her mercy and respect in the process. He had proven his will was not that of a tyrant who crushed his opposition, but of a true leader who could win without destroying. Slowly, she sank to one knee and bowed her head. "I have my answer," she said, her voice strained but clear. "The giant is awake, and its will is absolute." Just as a measure of calm was settling over the arena, a flicker of movement from the spectator stands caught Naruto's eye. Konan was approaching, her expression unreadable but the tension in her form unmistakable. She waited until he had helped Akane to her feet before she spoke. Her voice for his ears alone. "A report. From the scout you had me place in the northern wastes, near the old ruins of the land of frost." "What is it?" he asked, sensing the urgency. "The paper drone did not simply return," she said, holding out a single, perfectly white piece of origami shaped like a butterfly. "It carries a memory, a direct feed." She gently placed the paper butterfly on the back of Naruto's hand. The moment it touched his skin, an image flooded his mind, so clear and cold it felt real. He saw a desolate, frozen landscape of ice and black rock under a gray, unforgiving sky. A deep fissure had opened in the ground, a wound in the permafrost, and from it pulsed a sickly, violet light. As the paper spy's memory continued, a figure begged, and to pull itself from the glowing crack in the earth. It was not human, not Zetsu, not Otsutsuki. It was a being of pure, corrupted energy, its form vaguely humanoid but constantly shifting, like black smoke and purple lightning. It had no face, no eyes, but Naruto felt an ancient, malevolent intelligence staring out from the void of its head. The very air around it seemed to die, the ice turning black and brittle. The life force of the world itself being siphoned away by its presence. Then, in the final second of the memory, the faceless head turned. The being of corrupt energy looked directly at the paper butterfly. Directly through its senses, directly at him. The connection shattered, leaving Naruto standing in the sunlit arena, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. The threat from the stars was distant. A problem for tomorrow. But this ancient evil, this divine echo climbing from the world's hidden depths, was here. It was awake, and it knew he was watching. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Waking Maw. The sunlight of the arena felt like a cruel joke. The warmth on Naruto's skin was a lie, a thin veneer over the absolute zero he had just witnessed in his mind's eye. The paper butterfly on his hand dissolved into a dusting of inert pulp, its message delivered. The image of the faceless, violet-black entity clawing its way from the frozen earth was burned behind his eyes. Akane was the first to notice the change. One moment, he was a victorious, magnanimous warrior. The next, the warmth had vanished from his eyes, replaced by the chilling focus of a man staring into an open grave. What is it? She asked, her voice sharp with a warrior's intuition. What did you see? Naruto didn't answer immediately. He looked past her to where Mei and Kuretsuchi were hurrying towards them. Their expressions a mixture of triumph and concern. Tsunade was close behind, her medical instincts on high alert. Konan, Naruto said, his voice flat, devoid of its usual energy. Say it again. For everyone. Konan appeared beside him, a silent, paper wraith. My remote reconnaissance drone in the land of frost has been destroyed, she stated, her placid tone making the words even more jarring. Before its dissolution, it transmitted its final moments. It recorded a fissure opening in the ice fields. A being emerged. A being. A rogue shinobi. A summon. Tsunade demanded. Arrivan. Jin immediately scanning Naruto for injury. Nothing so simple, Naruto said, finally meeting her gaze. It wasn't made of chakra as we know it. It was the opposite. A void. A hole in the world that consumes life. He held up his hand, flexing his fingers as if trying to shake off the phantom chill of the vision. It's a cancer. A waking maw. He quickly, concisely relayed the vision, the desolation, the sickly violet light. The formless, shifting anatomy of the creature, and the chilling, personal moment of recognition at the end. He left nothing out. In this new world, secrets among his NER circle were a luxury he could not afford. Kuretsuchi crossed her arms, her earlier elation from the day's events completely gone, replaced by a stony pragmatism. So, while we've been building cities and worrying about feudal lords, some ancient horror decided to crawl out of a glacier. Fantastic. Is it related to the Otsutsuki? Mei asked, her mind already several steps ahead, calculating the geopolitical ramifications of a new, unknown threat. I don't think so, Naruto said, his brows furrowed in concentration as he tried to parse the feeling the entity had given him. The Otsutsuki feel alien, foreign. This felt native, like a sickness the world itself has contracted, something that has been sleeping, and has now been woken up. Akane, the outsider, listened with an unnerving stillness. In my homeland, there are stories, she said, her voice low. Tales of Oni, malevolent spirits born from the land's deepest sorrows. They are not creatures of flesh and blood, but manifestations of corruption. They cannot be killed with steel, only purified by a will that is stronger than their despair. Her words resonated with what Naruto had felt. This wasn't an enemy to be overpowered. It was a corruption to be cleansed. Then we have to go, Kuretsuchi said, a statement of fact, not a question. We can't send an army against an enemy we don't understand. It would be a slaughter. Worse, if that thing feeds on life force, a legion of shinobi would be a feast. A small team, Naruto agreed, nodding. The three of us. He looked from Kuretsuchi to Akane. Tsunade immediately stepped forward. Absolutely not. It's too reckless. We don't know what it is, what it can do. You are the pillar of this entire world, Naruto. You can't just run off on some high-risk mission. That's exactly why I have to, he countered. His voice firm but respectful. I'm the only one who can sense this thing properly. My sage mode is connected to the planet's natural energy. I can feel this wound. And what I felt in that vision, it felt me, too. It's drawn to life, and I'm the biggest concentration of natural energy on the planet. I'm already a target whether I'm sitting in this throne room or standing on that glacier. I'd rather face it on my own terms. He then turned to the Tsuchikage. Kuretsuchi, I need you. Your mastery of the earth is second to none. If this thing came from the ground, you might be the only one who can force the ground to take it back. A grim, determined smile touched Kuretsuchi's lips. I've been burying Iwa's problems my whole life. One more won't make a difference. Finally, he looked at the samurai general. Akane, this is not your fight. You came here for answers, not to die in a frozen wasteland. Akane slid her recovered katana back into its sheath with a decisive click. I came here to measure the will of the man who united a continent. The truest measure of a leader is the nature of the enemies they face. I have seen your shinobi, your politics, and your power. Now I will see your monsters. Her gaze was unwavering. I am going. There was no arguing with the conviction in her voice. It was the same unbending will he had felt during their duel. Then it's settled, Naruto said. Mei, Tsunade, you have command here. Bolster the capital's defenses, but do it quietly. Conan, feed us any intelligence you can get. We leave in 1 hour. The journey north was a stark contrast to the flight over the land of Earth. There was no conversation, no easy camaraderie. They flew on a platform of stone crafted by Kuretsuchi, a silent, grim trio hurtling towards the roof of the world. The landscape below changed dramatically, the browns and greens of the central continent giving way to the dark, needled expanse of taiga forest, which in turn thinned out and surrendered to the bleak, white emptiness of the land of frost. The temperature plummeted, but it was more than a physical cold. As they drew closer to the coordinates Conan had provided, Naruto could feel the life draining from the world around them. The natural energy he so readily drew upon grew thin and sluggish, like trying to breathe in a vacuum. It was a deep, spiritual cold that seeped into the bones. "We're close," he said, his voice a plume of white in the frigid air. "The very air feels dead." Kuretsuchi grunted in agreement, her focus on maintaining their flight. "I can't feel the rock anymore. It's like the earth is asleep down there." Even Akane, wrapped in a stoicism that seemed as impenetrable as her armor, had a hand resting on the hilt of her sword, her eyes constantly scanning the desolate horizon. They landed on a ridge overlooking a vast, frozen plain. The fissure was unmistakable. It was a jagged, black wound in the endless white, miles long, pulsing with a faint violet luminescence that painted the undersides of the low-hanging clouds in a sickening hue. The silence was absolute. No wind, no calls of Arctic animals, nothing. "There was a village near here," Naruto said, his sage senses stretching out, searching. "A small mining outpost." He pointed to a collection of dark shapes a few miles from the fissure, half buried in snow. "Over there." They approached the settlement on foot, the snow crunching loudly in the oppressive quiet. The place was not destroyed. The buildings were intact, doors left ajar, a child's toy lying half buried in a snowdrift. It was a ghost town. Inside the first dwelling, they found them. A family of 4, sitting around a table. They hadn't been killed. There were no wounds, no signs of struggle. Their bodies were simply empty. Desiccated husks, like mummified corpses, their faces frozen in expressions of placid horror, their eyes wide and staring at nothing. Every ounce of moisture, chakra, and life had been leached from them. Kuretsuchi swore under her breath, turning away. Akane placed a hand over the face of the child, a gesture of reverence and sorrow, before closing its unseeing eyes. "It didn't just kill them," Naruto said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "It consumed them." He walked out of the hut, his gaze drawn back to the pulsating fissure. "It's hungry." As if in answer to his words, the violet light from the fissure intensified. A low hum vibrated through the ice beneath their feet, and a shape began to rise from the chasm. It was the being from his vision. A formally SS horror of roiling black smoke and crackling purple energy, vaguely humanoid in shape but with no consistent anatomy. Tendrils of shadow lashed out from its core, solidifying for a moment before dissolving back into the main body. It had no face, but the void where a head should be turned towards them, and they all felt the crushing weight of its ancient, malevolent attention. The land around it died instantly. The snow turned to black, crystalline dust, and the very air seemed to thin and crackle with necrotic energy. "So that's the Oni," Akane breathed, drawing her katana. The blade was instantly coated in a shimmering white aura of her focused chakra. "All right," Kuretsuchi said, slamming her palms together. "Let's see how it likes the taste of molten rock. Lava style. Scorching rocks jutsu." She spat out a volley of massive, incandescent boulders. They soared through the air, melting the snow beneath them, and slammed into the creature's mass. But there was no satisfying impact. Molten rocks simply sank into the black smoke, their fiery glow extinguished as if plunged into deep water. The creature didn't even seem to notice. "It's absorbing the jutsu," Kuretsuchi said in disbelief. "The heat, the chakra. It's just eating it." The creature retaliated. A dozen shadowy tendrils shot towards them, faster than any shinobi. Akane moved to intercept. She was a blur of motion, her blade flashing. Samurai saber technique. EI beheading. Her sword sliced cleanly through 3 of the tendrils. Unlike the lava, her focused chakra seemed to do actual damage. The severed ends of the tendrils dissipated into inert smoke. But for every one she cut, Two more took its place. She was forced back, her face grim, realizing she was facing an enemy with no vital points, no discernible weakness. Naruto knew he was the main target. The creature was ignoring the others and flowing across the ice towards him, drawn to the immense life force he radiated. He activated his Six Paths Sage mode, a cloak of brilliant golden chakra erupting around him, pushing back the oppressive cold. A black receiver rod shot from his palm. Sage Art. Tailed Beast Recentrican. He didn't have time to create a massive one. He formed a smaller, denser version infused with Shukaku's magnet release, hoping to seal the creature's movements. He hurled it. The spinning vortex of wind and magnetic chakra hit the entity dead center. The effect was catastrophic. The creature's form exploded outward, but it wasn't destroyed. The Recentrican's energy was being ripped apart, shredded, and consumed by the void. The being swelled in size, its violet glow intensifying, the hum rising to a piercing shriek. Naruto, stop, Kuritsuchi yelled. Your power, it's feeding it. He realized his mistake instantly. Raw power was useless here. He was trying to fill a bottomless pit. The more he threw at it, the stronger it would become. He needed a different approach. The answer is in the earth beneath your feet. Katsuyu's words echoed in his mind. Learn to speak the world's language. He couldn't add energy to the fight. He had to take it away. He had to reinforce the world around the Ma, not attack it directly. Kuritsuchi. Akane. New plan. He yelled, dodging a sweeping wave of necrotic energy that turned the ground it touched to dust. I'm going to hold it in place. I need the biggest, densest, most powerful sealing jutsu you have. Kuritsuchi. Akane. Keep its attention off of her. Akane didn't need to be told twice. She charged forward, her blade a flickering dance of light, engaging the tendrils in a desperate battle to buy time. Naruto took a deep breath, sinking into a low stance. He held his hands out, palms facing the creature. He stopped projecting his own power outward. Instead, he began to draw. He pulled on the thin, sluggish natural energy of the frozen land, a difficult, painful process like sucking honey through a straw. But then he reached deeper, past the corrupted surface, connecting to the immense, dormant life force in the planet's core. The golden cloak around him intensified, but it didn't flare. It became dense, tangible. Two massive chakra arms, glowing with the brilliance of the sun, erupted from his back and shot forward, not to strike the creature, but to grab it. The moment his chakra arms made contact, he felt a horrific, draining sensation. The Ma began to feast on his power directly. But Naruto held firm, his teeth gritted. He wasn't pushing. He was holding. He was using his connection to the planet's natural energy to create a prison of reality. A cage of pure life force that the deathly void could not easily consume. It was a battle of wills, a concept against an anti-concept. Now, Kuritsuchi, now, he roared, the veins on his temples bulging. Kuritsuchi's hands were a blur of signs. This was a jutsu she had never attempted, a theoretical application of her Kage-Level power. Earth-style. Tectonic coffin. She slammed her palms on the frozen ground. It wasn't an attack, it was a command. The entire plane groaned. The great fissure the creature had emerged from began to close, the two sides of the ice sheet grinding together with unimaginable force. But it was more than that. Deep beneath the ice, the bedrock itself was moving at her command. Massive, continental plates were shifting. Akane leapt back as the ground around the Ma buckled and broke. Four colossal pillars of black, ancient bedrock, each the size of a mountain, erupted from the depths. They slammed into the creature's flanks, forcing its nebulous form together, compressing it. Then, a fifth plate of rock rose from directly beneath it, and a sixth slammed down from above, where Kuritsuchi had torn it from a nearby mountain range. The six sides of the tectonic coffin slammed together, sealing the waking Ma inside a perfect, seamless cube of primordial stone miles beneath the surface. The violet light vanished. The oppressive psychic pressure was gone. The unnatural cold began to recede, replaced by the normal, biting wind of the Arctic. Silence descended once more, broken only by the ragged breaths of the three warriors. Akane stood leaning on her sword, her armor scored and cracked. Kuritsuchi was on one knee, sweat pouring down her face despite the cold, the sheer scale of the jutsu having taken a massive toll. Naruto's golden aura faded. He walked to the spot where the creature had been sealed, now just a patch of disturbed ice and snow. He placed his hand on the ground. He could still feel it. Deep, deep below, trapped in a cage of stone that would hold for 1,000 years, a malevolent, hungry consciousness was still aware. Still waiting. They hadn't killed it. They had just put it back in its box. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Kuretsuchi asked, walking up to stand beside him. Naruto looked at her, then at Akane, who had joined them. He saw in their eyes the same grim understanding he felt in his own heart. The Otsutsuki were a storm gathering on the horizon. But a rot had already taken root in the foundations of their world. They had won the battle, but the nature of the war had just changed, becoming darker and more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. Yeah, Naruto said, his gaze turning to the vast, empty horizon. It is. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Serpent's Shadow. The return to the imp. Aerial capital was heavy with a silence that the roar of their stone transport could not pierce. The biting Arctic cold had been replaced by the mild air of the central continent, but the chill remained, a phantom of the void they had faced. Lodged deep in their souls. They were no longer just a cage, a general, and an emperor. They were three people who had stood at the edge of the world and looked into an abyss that stared back. A bond had been forged in that frozen wasteland, not of friendship, but of shared, horrifying knowledge. They landed on the high balcony of the spire to a reception of profound relief. Mei Terumi's carefully maintained composure cracked for a moment as she saw them, a flicker of genuine warmth in her eyes that was quickly masked by her usual poise. Tsunade was less reserved, immediately stepping forward to give Naruto a bruising hug that was equal parts affection and frustration. Konan simply appeared, a silent presence offering a single, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement. In the council chamber, the story was told. Naruto recounted the desiccated bodies, the life-leeching presence of the Ma, and the terrifying realization that their most powerful ninjutsu only served to feed the beast. Kuretsuchi described the sheer force of will it took to command the very bedrock of the planet to imprison it, her voice carrying the exhaustion of the effort. Akane, with the stark poetry of a warrior, spoke of an enemy without form or fear, a manifestation of pure decay. When they finished, the full weight of their new reality settled over the obsidian table. Two fronts, one in the void of space, an ancient, patient thread of godlike parasites. The other sleeping beneath their feet, a native cancer that consumed life itself. So we're caught between the reapers and the rot, Tsunade summarized, her voice grim. She looked older than she had a day ago. We can't fight both at once. Not with the world as it is. Which is why the unification of the military must be our absolute priority. Mei said, her mind already shifting to strategy. But this new threat, it changes the calculus. We don't just need soldiers. We need specialists. We need a new kind of shinobi. Before the conversation could go further, a side door opened and an Imperial Guard captain entered, his expression urgent. He bowed stiffly to Naruto. Your Majesty, there has been an incident. What kind of incident? Naruto asked, his weariness instantly replaced by a sharp focus. An attempted theft at the Imperial Archives. The intruder was apprehended. It was Jirobo Hoshigaki, formerly of Otogakure. A collective tension filled the room. Jirobo was not some common thief. He had been one of Orochimaru's most fanatically loyal lieutenants, a master of forbidden jutsu Who had been pardoned along with hundreds of other sound shinobi when the village was absorbed into the capital. He had been quiet, seemingly integrated. What was he trying to steal? Naruto demanded. The captain swallowed, his gaze flicking nervously to the others. Lord Orochimaru's research, specifically, his complete works on the Impure World reincarnation. The silence that followed was colder than the land of frost. Edo Tensei, the forbidden jutsu that had dragged the fourth great ninja war into its darkest depths, a technique that violated the very laws of life and death. He said something before he was subdued. The captain added, he said, the Emperor's ethics are a chain. We need fangs, not speeches, to fight the coming darkness. They found Jirobo in a maximum security cell, his chakra sealed and his body bound in restraints. He was a powerfully built man with a sneer permanently etched onto his face. He looked at Naruto not with fear, but with a defiant, pitying contempt. Uzumaki, he spat. Come to lecture me on the power of friendship. I came to ask you why, Naruto said, his voice level. Why try to bring back a jutsu that caused so much pain? Pain. It was a tool, Jirobo snapped, struggling against his bonds. The ultimate weapon. An immortal army that feels no pain, that cannot be stopped. You saw it yourself. You of all people should understand its value. You faced gods from the stars and horrors from the ice. Are you really so naive as to think you can fight them with Rasengans and trust? Lord Orochimaru understood. True power requires sacrifice. Chi requires a willingness to do what is necessary, no matter the cost. His words were a poisoned dart, aimed directly at the heart of Naruto's philosophy. The council convened again, the atmosphere thick with disagreement. This is insurrection, Kuritsuchi stated flatly, her fist resting on the table. He's not just a thief, he's an ideologue. He's spreading dissent among the former sound shinobi. His words are a direct challenge to your authority and your entire platform of peace. There is only one way to deal with this, a swift, public execution. We have to show that this new era has consequences for treason. Akane, who had been listening silently, nodded in agreement. In the land of iron, the code is absolute. A samurai who betrays his lord and seeks forbidden power has forfeited his life. Mercy in this case would be perceived as weakness. It will invite more challenges. An execution would turn him into a martyr, Mei countered, her expression troubled. There are thousands of former Oto shinobi living in the capital. They are skilled, powerful, and their loyalty to this new world is tenuous at best. We kill one of their own for wrong think, and we risk turning a pocket O.F. descent into a full-blown rebellion from within our own walls. Tsunade sighed, rubbing her temples. She's right. Jirobo is a symptom, not the disease. The disease is fear. He's afraid of the new threats. And he's clinging to the only kind of power he understands. We need to handle this carefully. Naruto listened, the weight of their arguments pressing down on him. Kuritsuchi and Akane were right. A ruler had to project strength and decisiveness. But Mei and Tsunade were also right. A leader couldn't rule through fear alone. To execute Jirobo would be to admit that his ideals, of redemption, of understanding, were a sham. A luxury he couldn't afford when things got difficult. It would mean that in the end, his peace was no different from the iron-fisted rule of any other dictator. As the debate raged, Konan spoke, her voice cutting through the noise like a shard of glass. There is another factor. All eyes turned to her. Jirobo did not act alone. The breach in the archives was too clean, too well planned. He had help. For the last several months, he has been in regular, clandestine contact with a particular individual. She placed a file on the table. On its cover was a picture of a man with round glasses. Silver hair tied in a ponytail, and a serene, unreadable smile. Kabuto Yakushi. A chill snaked through Naruto. Kabuto, Orochimaru's most brilliant and devoted follower, he man who had perfected the Edo Tensei and fought alongside Obito. He had claimed to have found redemption under the influence of Izanami during the war and was now living a quiet life, running a Te-funded orphanage in the outskirts of Konoha. Kabuto, Tsunade said in disbelief. I would have sworn he was a changed man. He is changed, Naruto said softly, staring at the picture. He's no longer a follower. He's a player. He understood now. This wasn't a simple rebellion. It was a test, a move in a game of philosophical chess. He stood up. This debate is over. I'll handle this. What are you going to do? Kuritsuchi demanded. I'm going to have a conversation, Naruto replied, his expression unreadable as he walked out of the room. The Konoha orphanage was a peaceful place, nestled in a quiet, wooded district. Children's laughter echoed through the trees. It was the picture of the new world Naruto was trying to build. He found Kabuto in a library, reading a medical text while a young girl with cat-like ears slept soundly in his lap. He looked up as Naruto entered, and his smile was gentle, welcoming, and utterly devoid of surprise. Lord Emperor, he said, his voice a soft murmur so as not to wake the child. An unexpected honor. To what do I owe the pleasure? Cut the act, Kabuto, Naruto said, his voice low. He didn't radiate power. He stood there as a man, his presence filling the room nonetheless. Jirobo. The Edo Tensei. This was your play. Kabuto carefully marked his page before closing the book. He gently stroked the sleeping girl's hair. Play. That's a rather cynical way to put it. I would call it a contingency plan. An audit of our current leadership's strategic flexibility. You're testing me. Someone has to, Kabuto replied, his gaze sharp and analytical behind his glasses. You have built a world on hope, Naruto-kun. It's beautiful, admirable, even. But hope is not a strategy. We are facing extinction-level threats. Beings that feed on ninjutsu. Gods that devour planets. And your response is to build parks and promote trade. He carefully lifted the sleeping child and carried her to a nearby cot, tucking her in before turning back to Naruto. I lived my life in the shadows, serving a man who understood a fundamental truth. To survive, you must be willing to become a monster, Kabuto continued, his voice still a whisper, but each word laced with the conviction of a zealot. Lord Orochimaru's methods were cruel, but they sought power. Power to transcend human limits. Power to face any threat. You have that power now, more than he ever dreamed of. And you waste it on policing ideologies. You hamstring yourself with morality. My morality is not a hamstring. It's my spine, Naruto countered. We become monsters to fight monsters. What's the point of surviving if we lose everything that makes us worth saving? The point is survival, Kabuto hissed, his calm facade finally cracking. The children sleeping in this orphanage. They are the point. Do you think your ideals will protect them when an Otsutsuki decides to harvest this planet for a chakra fruit? Do you think a speech about understanding will stop a creature that feeds on life itself? I am not your enemy, Naruto. I am your fail-safe. I am the one willing to ask the questions you are afraid to even think. Jirobo was a simple test. Would you have the stomach to use a forbidden jutsu? To sacrifice the few to save the many? To make the hard, dirty choices that a true ruler must make? Here it was, the heart of the matter. The serpent's shadow, whispering the same poison of pragmatism and fear that had driven Nagato, Obito, and Madara. Naruto was silent for a long moment, letting Kabuto's words hang in the air. He saw the genuine fear behind the man's logic, the twisted desire to protect. Born from a lifetime of being a disposable tool. You're right, Naruto said, and Kabuto's eyes widened in surprise. I am afraid, but not of the Otsutsuki, or the Ma. I'm afraid of what you want me to become. I'm afraid of a world where we bring back the dead to fight our battles, where we sacrifice our souls for a few more years of existence. That's not survival. That's just a slower death. He took a step closer, his gaze hardening. You think I don't understand what's at stake? You think I don't know that hard choices are coming? But the choices will be mine. Guided by my will, not by Orochimaru's ghost. He laid out his judgment, and it was nothing Kabuto could have anticipated. Jirobo will not be executed. His knowledge of forbidden jutsu is a resource. He is hereby assigned to a new imperial task force, under the direct command of Tsuchikage Kuretsuchi. He will use his expertise to help us understand, track, and develop countermeasures for the waking Ma's. He wanted to find fangs to fight the darkness. I'm giving him the chance. He will be on a very short leash, and if he steps out of line, the Tsuchikage has my full permission to bury him. And you, Kabuto, Naruto continued, his voice dropping, you want to be a fail-safe. Fine, your orphanage is now under the permanent stewardship and protection of General Akane of the Land of Iron. She will be your warden, your shadow. You will continue your work here, raising these children, teaching them. But you will also report to her daily. She will audit your research, your communications, your every move. You will use your brilliant mind to help us, to develop the medical and scientific advancements we'll need to face what's coming. You want to be a part of the solution. Congratulations. You've just been conscripted. He had not used force. He had not resorted to threats. He had taken their arguments, their strengths, their very ideologies, and twisted them into tools for his new world. He had turned a prison sentence into a purpose, and a warden into a leash made of honor and steel. It was a checkmate of absolute political and personal mastery. Kabuto was speechless. He stared at Naruto, seeing not the naive boy from the war, but a leader of terrifying clarity and conviction. He had tested the Emperor's will and found it to be not brittle idealism, but tempered, unbreakable steel. That evening, The tension in the capital had eased, replaced by a buzzing admiration for the emperor's judgment. Naruto stood on his balcony, looking out at the sprawling city lights, the weight of the day finally settling on him. The click of heels on stone announced Mei's arrival. She carried 2 glasses and a bottle of fine sake. She didn't speak, just handed him a glass and stood beside him. Her presence a comforting warmth in the cool night air. "That was a dangerous game you played," she said after a long silence. "The most dangerous games are the only ones worth playing," he murmured, taking a sip of the sake. "Kuritsuchi thinks you're a madman. A brilliant one, but a madman nonetheless," she said, a smile in her voice. "Akane is intrigued. She said she has never met a leader who forged his chains from his enemy's convictions. And what do you think?" he asked, turning to look at her. In the soft glow of the city lights, the fatigue was visible on his face, the immense strain of holding a world together. Mei reached out, her fingers gently brushing a stray strand of blonde hair from his forehead. It was a simple, intimate gesture that spoke volumes. "I think," she said softly, her green eyes searching his, "that the world is lucky you were the madman in charge." He managed a small, tired smile. In her eyes, he didn't see the adulation of a subject for her emperor, or the calculation of a political ally. He saw a genuine, profound connection. A partnership. He leaned in, and for a moment, the weight of the world, the threat of the stars, and the rot in the earth all seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them on a balcony, under the watchful eyes of a fragile peace. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Iron Will. The sparring circle, a disk of perfect L.Y. flattened earth in the highest garden of the spire, was a sanctuary. Here, there were no titles, no council meetings, no cosmic threats, only the crisp slap of fist on forearm and the sharp intake of breath. Naruto, stripped to his black undershirt, moved in a fluid dance of avoidance and redirection, his opponent a whirlwind of powerful, precise strikes. Kuritsuchi fought like her element. She was unyielding, solid. Her every move grounded and explosive. She didn't have Tsunade's raw, chakra-enhanced strength, but she had a brawler's cunning and an earth mover's power. A high kick that could shatter stone whistled past Naruto's head. He ducked under it, sweeping her standing leg. Instead of falling, she dropped her hands to the ground, spinning on her palms to deliver a brutal heel strike to his ribs. He absorbed the blow with a grunt, the impact radiating through him. He caught her ankle, using her momentum to spin her around and throw her. She landed lightly on her feet 10 yards away, a predatory grin on her face. Her chest heaving slightly. "Getting slow, Lord Emperor," she taunted, wiping a bead of sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. "Just enjoying the view, Tsuchikage," he shot back, his own grin flashing. The easy banter between them was a new development, forged in the frozen north and tempered in the political fires of the last few weeks. It was a language of mutual, hard-won respect. "Liar," she snorted, relaxing her stance. "You're distracted. I can feel it in your rhythm. You haven't been sleeping, have you?" He sighed, the playful energy draining away, replaced by the familiar weight. "The silence is the loudest part. We sealed the maw, but I can still feel the hole it left. And the Otsutsuki are still out there. It's like waiting for two hurricanes to make landfall at the same time." Kuritsuchi walked over to a stone bench, picking up a water flask and taking a long drink before tossing it to him. "Worrying won't make them come any faster. Or any slower. All we can do is what's in front of us." She sat down, her expression turning thoughtful. "Speaking of which, my seismology teams have been picking up something strange." Naruto took a drink, the cool water a welcome relief. "Strange how? Related to the Ma's prison?" "No, that's the weird part. The prison is stable, rock solid. Pardon the pun," she said, tapping her finger on the bench. "This is different. Deep tremors. Subtectonic. They're not strong, more like a planetary heartbeat that's slightly off rhythm. My geologists are dismissing it as residual stress from the war, but," she trailed off, frowning, "it doesn't feel random." Before Naruto could press her on it, the figure of Akane appeared at the edge of the garden, her armor immaculate, her posture ramrod straight. She strode towards them, her face an unreadable mask of duty. "Lord Uzumaki," she said, her voice formal. She gave a crisp bow, first to him, then a nod of acknowledgement to Kuretsuchi. I have received a communique from my shogun. He extends his gratitude for your intervention with Kabuto Yakushi. He also sends a formal invitation. He requests your presence in the Land of Iron. An invitation? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. Is this a social call? No, Akane replied, her gaze unwavering. It is a plea. A civil war is on the verge of erupting in my homeland. General Kato, the commander of the Northern Army, has defied the shogun. He sees the new alliance with the Shinobi nations as a cultural poison. He preaches that our samurai traditions will be corrupted by your chaotic ways. Kuretsuchi snorted. He's not entirely wrong. Akane ignored her. Kato has seized the sky-piercing fortress of Hagane and is rallying the more traditionalist clans to his banner. He is a brilliant strategist and a beloved warrior. The shogun fears that a direct conflict would tear our nation in two. He does not ask for your armies. He asks for you. He believes that only the man Ho united the shinobi can show my people that our two cultures can coexist. That strength does not have to mean isolation. It was a challenge wrapped in a plea. A political minefield. To interfere in another nation's internal strife was incredibly risky. To refuse was to let the first crack appear in the foundation of his new world order. Kato wants a war to prove the barbarism of shinobi, Naruto mused. Sending an army would be handing him the victory, no matter who won the battle. He looked from Akane's intensely focused face to Kuretsuchi's skeptical one. It has to be a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. He made his decision. I will go. Akane, you will be my guide. And I'm bringing one other person. Mei Terumi met them at the docks, a small, unassuming travel pack on her shoulder. Shish. E had traded her court attire for the practical, dark blue flak jacket and leggings of an active-duty kunoichi. The change was striking. The diplomat was gone, replaced by the deadly fifth Mizukage. The Land of Iron, she said. A curious smile playing on her lips as she looked at the sleek, black ship waiting for them. I've always wanted to see their famous steelwork. And their men. Akane, standing stiffly by the gangplank, gave Mei a sidelong, disapproving glance. The contrast between the two women was stark. Akane was a straight, unbending blade of tempered steel. Mei was a flowing river of mist, beautiful, alluring, and capable of drowning you before you realize the danger. The journey across the Western Ocean was an education. Akane, in her element, spoke of her homeland. She Desker. I bet a society built on a rigid code of honor, where a person's word was their bond and every action was weighed on the scales of duty and shame. She spoke of the shogun, a wise but aging leader, and of Kato, a man she had once admired. A patriot whose love for his country had curdled into a fear of the outside world. Mei, for her part, used her charm and disarming wit to gently probe for strategic information. Learning the political landscape, the key players, and the cultural pressure points with the ease of a master spy. So, this General Kato, she purred one evening, as they watched the sun set over the endless expanse of water, is he handsome? Akane bristled. He is a traitor. Oh, the most handsome ones often are. Mei sighed dramatically, earning a rare, almost imperceptible twitch of a smile from Naruto. He saw the friction between them, but also the grudging respect that was beginning to form. Mei's sharp intellect was something Akane couldn't ignore, and Akane's unbending integrity was a quality Mei secretly admired. They arrived not at a bustling port, but at a secluded cove, met by samurai loyal to the shogun. The Land of Iron was a world of stark, monochrome beauty. Jagged mountains, their peaks permanently clad in snow, rose from dark, dense forests of pine. The architecture was all sharp angles and clean lines, minimalist and functional. The very air felt disciplined. The sky-piercing fortress of Hagane lived up to its name. It was not built on a mountain, it was the mountain. A single, colossal spire of dark, metallic ore had been hollowed out and fortified over centuries. Its sheer faces polished by wind and time until they offered no purchase. Banners bearing Kato's sigil, a wrathful Oni mask, snapped in the high, thin air. It is impenetrable, Akane stated, her voice tight with a mixture of pride and frustration. One path up, and it is a death trap. The walls cannot be scaled, and the ore disrupts most sensory ninjutsu. A frontal assault would cost 10,000 lives. Good thing we're not an army, Naruto said, his eyes scanning the fortress. He wasn't looking at the walls, he was feeling the flow of life within. Kado is a symbol. We don't need to break down his walls. We just need to walk through his front door. Their plan was audacious. Mei, using a subtle transformation jutsu to alter her features and a cover story of being a displaced artisan, would enter the small city at the base of the fortress. Her mission? To listen, to spread whispers, to gauge the true level of Kado's support. War was as much about morale as it was about steel. Meanwhile, Naruto and Akane would do the impossible. They would climb the spire. That night, under the sliver of a new moon, they began their ascent. They didn't use the path. Naruto, channeling a thin, almost undetectable layer of chakra to his hands and feet, clung to the sheer rock face like an insect. It was a slow, painstaking process that required immense concentration. Akane, using specialized grappling claws, followed close behind, her movements silent and sure. This wasn't about power. It was about pure, nerve-shredding skill. One misplaced hand, one moment of lost focus, and they would plummet to their deaths. Naruto could have flown, of course, but that would have announced his presence. This was a mission of infiltration, a quiet message that even impenetrable walls were meaningless to a shinobi of his caliber. Hours later, muscles burning, they slipped over the parapet of an unguarded balcony high on the spire. They were in. They moved through the fortress like ghosts. Naruto's sensory abilities guiding them through the patrol routes, Akane's knowledge of the layout leading them towards the central keep. They found Kado in the high command chamber, a stark room adorned with little more than strategic maps and weapons racks. He was not what Naruto expected. He was a powerfully built man in his late 40s, his face noble and etched with conviction, his eyes holding a clear, intelligent fire. He stood over a map, and when he looked up, there was no surprise on his face, only a weary resignation. Uzumaki Naruto, he said, his voice a deep baritone. I should have known you would not use the front gate. You shinobi have no honor. Honor isn't found in a choice of doorway, Kado-san, Naruto replied calmly, stepping out of the shadows. Akane appeared beside him, her expression torn. Akane, Kado said, a note of genuine sadness in his voice. You have brought the plague to our heartland. I have brought a leader, not a plague, she retorted. One who came to speak, not to conquer. Words are the tools of deceivers, Kado spat, his hand moving to the hilt of his katana. Your peace is a lie, a dilution of our culture. You absorb everyone you touch, turning them into a pale imitation of your own chaotic world. I am saving the land of iron from that fate. I am preserving its soul. A soul that is preserved in a glass jar is already dead, Naruto said. True strength is the ability to adapt, to grow, not to hide behind walls of stone and fear. Fear. Kado let out a sharp, humorless laugh. I do not fear you. I pity you. You have the power of a god, but the convictions of a child. You believe you can talk your way out of the storm that is coming. I will show you the truth. The world is not changed with speeches. It is forged in steel. He drew his blade. It was a masterpiece, its edge glowing with a faint blue chakra. I challenge you. No ninjutsu. No divine tricks. A duel of swords. A battle of wills. Let us see if the emperor's spine is as strong as his tongue. It was the ultimate test. To refuse was to prove Kado's point about shinobi cowardice. To accept was to meet a master swordsman on his own terms. I accept, Naruto said. He didn't draw a weapon. He simply fell into a ready stance, his senses sharpening as he activated Sage Mode. The orange pigmentation around his eyes was the only sign of his power. The duel was everything Akane had feared. Kado was more than a master, he was an artist of death. His style was a blur of absolute precision, each strike flowing into the next, a relentless, probing assault. There were no wasted movements, no flourishes. It was the pinnacle of samurai swordsmanship. Naruto, armed only with a kunai, was a study in contrasts. He couldn't block the chakra-infused blade directly. He had to parry, to deflect, to use Kado's own force against him. He was a leaf in a hurricane, bending but never breaking. His Sage Mode precognition was the only thing keeping him alive, allowing him to anticipate Kado's attacks a split second before they happened. Clang, scrape. The ring of steel filled the chamber. To Akane, it was a terrifying ballet. Kato was the aggressor, driving Naruto back, his blade a constant threat. But Naruto, for all his defensive maneuvering, was not losing. He was learning. He was seeing the patterns, the subtle shifts in Kato's breathing, the minute tells in his stance. Kato, growing frustrated by his inability to land a decisive blow, committed himself to a powerful overhead strike, pouring all his strength and chakra into one final, decisive cut. This was the moment Naruto had been waiting for. He didn't dodge backward. He moved forward, inside the arc of the swing. He dropped his kunai, letting it clatter to the floor. As the glowing blade descended, he brought his hands up, not to block, but to catch the flat of the sword between his palms. The impact was immense. The floor beneath them cracked. But Naruto held firm, his sage-enhanced strength just enough to stall the blow inches from his head. Kato's eyes widened in shock. With a surge of strength, Naruto twisted his hands. There was a sharp crack, and the legendary blade, a national treasure, snapped in two. Kato stumbled back, holding the shattered hilt of his sword, his face a mask of disbelief. He was defeated, disarmed. His ultimate technique, his finest steel, his unbending will, all of it had been broken by the bare hands of the man he had underestimated. Naruto stood, breathing heavily, but his gaze was clear and steady. Your will is strong, Kato-san. Your blade was true, but you fight to protect a memory. I fight to build a future. Silence reigned in the chamber. The sounds of alarm were beginning to rise from the fortress below, but here, in the heart of the rebellion, the war was over. Kato looked at his broken sword, then at Naruto's offered hand, and the fire of his conviction was finally extinguished, replaced by the dawning light of a terrible, profound understanding. He had lost. Just as a measure of peace settled, a small, paper bird fluttered through the open balcony window, landing silently on Naruto's shoulder. It was one of Conan's messengers. He touched it, and her voice spoke directly into his mind, cold and urgent. Naruto. The seismic readings Kuretsuchi reported. They are no longer random. They have coalesced into a distinct pattern. A rhythmic, impossibly powerful pulse. They are converging on a single point in the abyssal plain of the Western Ocean, equidistant from your location and the Shinobi continent. Naruto's blood ran cold. He walked to the balcony, Akane and a defeated Kato following him. He looked out not at the mountains of the land of iron, but at the vast, dark expanse of the ocean. Thing Kuretsuchi had dismissed as noise, the planetary heartbeat that was off rhythm, was the sound of a lock turning. The sound of a cage door groaning open. The sound of something ancient, and impossibly large, beginning to stir in the crushing darkness of the deep. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Leviathan's Dirge. The silence in the high command chamber was heavier than the mountain around them. Kato stood with the two halves of his broken blade in his hands, not just a weapon, but the symbol of his ideology, shattered. His finest samurai, having burst into the room ready for a battle, now stood frozen. Their swords half drawn, caught between loyalty to their general and the impossible reality before them. Naruto Uzumaki, the shinobi, barbarian, had not burned his way into their fortress. He had walked through its heart and disarmed their rebellion without taking a single life. It is over, Kato said, his voice rough with a defeat that was more than just physical. He looked at his men, his gaze sweeping over their shocked faces. Lower your blades. I have surrendered. He then turned to Akane, the pain of betrayal in his eyes now replaced by a deep, weary understanding. You chose well, Akane. Your will was truer than mine. Before Akane could respond, a low, deep tremor shook the entire fortress. It was not the violent jolt of an earthquake, but a pervasive, nauseating vibration that seemed to rise from the planet's very core. Dust trickled from the ceiling, and the weapons on the racks rattled ominously. What was that? One of the samurai demanded, steadying himself. Naruto's head snapped up, his sage mode senses, still active, screaming a silent alarm. He was no longer looking at Kato, but through the walls, past the mountain, out towards the vast, dark ocean. Conan's warning, he said, his voice grim. It's starting. The paper bird on his shoulder pulsed with light, and Conan's voice echoed in his mind again, laced with a new urgency. The pulse is accelerating. We are getting reports of spontaneous tidal surges along the entire western coastline. Water levels are rising erratically. This is not a natural phenomenon. The resolution in the Land of Iron was swift and anticlimactic. The shogun's loyalist forces arrived to find not a fortress braced for a bloody siege, but a surrendered army and a rebel general in quiet contemplation. Naruto had no time for political ceremonies. He left Kato in the shogun's custody, a problem that had already been solved, his mind now consumed by the far greater one rising from the sea. He, Akane, and a Fr. Eshlie returned Mehmet on the black ship, which was now straining against its moorings in the unnaturally swelling tide of the cove. The sky was clear, but the sea was a chaos of conflicting currents. The water churning as if being stirred by an unseen, colossal hand. The coastal towns are in full-scale evacuation, May reported, her usual playful demeanor gone, replaced by the crisp efficiency of a cage in crisis. She held a communication scroll that was glowing with incoming reports. But the surges are unpredictable. We've already lost a fishing fleet out of the Land of Waves. They were LLED under by a rogue whirlpool in a calm sea. It's a displacement effect, Naruto reasoned, staring at the turbulent water. Something huge is moving down there, and the entire ocean is reacting to it. Akane stood at the ship's railing, her hand gripping it so tightly her knuckles were white. "This is what you fight?" she asked, her voice a low murmur. "Not men with swords, but the world itself." "Sometimes," Naruto said quietly. "Welcome to the new era." That night, as the ship cut a desperate path back east, the world felt precariously balanced on a knife's edge. Naruto stood on the deck, the sea spray cool on his face. The tremors were constant now, a low, thrumming vibration that traveled through the ship's hull and up into his bones. It was a deeply unsettling sensation, a reminder of the immense, unknown power they were moving towards, and also fleeing from. May joined him, wrapping a light cloak around her shoulders. The wind whipped strands of her auburn hair across her face. For a long time, they just stood together, watching the dark, churning water. "You look like you're carrying that whole mountain back there on your shoulders," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the rush of the sea. "Feels like it," he admitted, not taking his eyes off the horizon. "We seal one monster, and another, bigger one wakes up. I feel like all I'm doing is plugging holes in a dam that's about to burst." "That's what it is to be a cage," she said, a hint of old weariness in her tone. "Or an emperor. It doesn't stop. The best you can do is fix the hole in front of you, and trust the people you've put in place to handle the ones to your left and right." She moved closer, her shoulder brushing against his arm. It was a small, grounding touch in the face of the overwhelming chaos. "You're not holding it up alone, Naruto." He finally looked at her. In her eyes, he saw not just the sharp political mind or the deadly kunoichi, but a deep well of empathy. She understood the weight, the crushing loneliness of command. "I know," he said, and the words were more than just an acknowledgement, they were a quiet thank you. Their moment of peace was interrupted by the appearance of a perfect, solid white clone of Conan, formed from 1,000 sheets of paper on the deck. It was a jutsu of incredible skill, allowing her to project her presence across the ocean. "It is time," the paper clone said in Conan's voice. "Tsunade and Kuretsuchi are ready." They convened in the ship's main cabin around a large map table. Conan's clone stood at one end. In the center, a flawless projection of Tsunade and Kuretsuchi shimmered into existence, transmitted via a long-range communication network powered by the capital's central chakra reactor. Tsunade's face was grim. "The seismic activity is off the charts. It's not just a creature, it's a geological event. It's radiating a chakra signature so massive, so ancient, it's distorting the natural energy field across half the globe. My team's finally got a lock on its nature," Kuretsuchi added, her voice tight with a mixture of scientific awe and absolute terror. "We were wrong. It's not the planet's immune system. It's older." Katsuyu-sama spoke of the god tree as a wound. "Well, according to Iowa's deepest geological records and legends, this is the scab. A planetary-scale life form that was forced into a dormant state when the god tree first sank its roots into the world's chakra network. It's been sleeping for millennia, healing, gathering strength. And now, with the world's natural energy finally stabilizing after Kageya's defeat, It's waking up. What does it want? Akane asked, her voice sharp. Want? Kuretsuchi let out a harsh laugh. It doesn't want anything. It's a biological process. It perceives the current state of the world, the proliferation of chakra, of humanity, as an infection that grew from the original wound. Its purpose is to sterilize the planet, to scrape it clean down to the bedrock and start the life cycle over. A heavy silence fell over the cabin. They were not facing an enemy. They were facing a planetary extinction event, a force of nature with no malice, no ideology, only a grim, biological purpose. We can't fight it, May stated, her mind racing through the implications. A direct assault would be like trying to punch a tsunami. If it's as big as you say, our attacks would be pinpricks. Worse, Naruto said, his eyes closed in concentration as he focused his sage mode on the distant, colossal signature. It's made of, and sustained by, the world's natural energy. Just like the Ma, feeding it chakra would be like trying to put out a fire with oil. It would only make it stronger, accelerate the sterilization process. So we just let it happen. Tsunade demanded, her voice rising. We let it wipe us all out. No, Naruto said, opening his eyes. They held a fearsome, calm clarity. We don't fight it. We don't try to kill it. We put it back to sleep. He looked around the table, at the faces of his most trusted allies. Katsuyu told me I needed to learn to speak the world's language. This thing is the world's oldest, loudest voice. I have to get close to it. I have to use my sage mode, not to attack, but to communicate. To connect with the natural energy that comprises its very being and convince it that we are not a plague. To soothe it back into its slumber. That's insane, Kuretsuchi said bluntly. You'd be a drop of rain trying to calm the ocean. It will consume you before you even get close. Not if I have help, Naruto countered. Kuretsuchi, I need you. Not on Iwa, but with me. I need your power to create a platform, a shield, something that can withstand the physical pressures of the open ocean and the creature's defenses. May, he turned to the former Mizukage, you're the greatest water-style user alive. I need you to part the seas, to control the currents, to get us to the heart of the storm. The three of us, we are the only ones who can do this. What about me? Akane asked, stepping forward. Her expression was fierce, demanding a role in the world's defense. Naruto met her gaze. You have the most important job of all. Go back to the land of iron. Take command of the shogun's forces and Kato's. Their discipline and logistics are legendary. Coordinate with Tsunade. You are now the joint commander of the continental defense. Your samurai and our shinobi will work as one to build sea walls, evacuate the coastlines, and protect the civilian population from the fallout. You will show your people, and mine, that our alliance is not a weakness, but the only hope for our survival. It was a staggering display of trust, a political masterstroke born of genuine necessity. He was entrusting the safety of his people to an outsider, binding their two nations together not with treaties, but with a shared, desperate purpose. Akane stared at him, a storm of emotions in her eyes, before giving the crispest, most resolute bow of her life. It will be done, Lord Emperor. The plan was set. Akane departed on a smaller, faster vessel, carrying a mandate that would change the land of iron forever. Naruto, May, and Konan's clone continued east. A day later, they rendezvoused with Kuretsuchi in the middle of a storm-tossed sea. She stood on a massive, floating platform of her own creation, a hexagonal shield of interlocking stone plates that rode the massive swells with impossible stability. The moment they stepped onto the platform, they felt it. The low, thrumming vibration of the planet was no longer just a feeling, it was a sound. A deep, mournful, subsonic hum that echoed up from the abyssal depths. It was a sound of immense, ancient loneliness and profound, world-shaking power. It was the Leviathan's dirge. The epicenter is 200 kilometers due east, Kuretsuchi yelled over the roar of the wind and waves. The water pressure and energy readings are increasing exponentially. May stepped to the edge of the platform. The sea before them was a nightmare of skyscraper-sized rogue waves and violent, swirling currents. She closed her eyes, her hands weaving a complex series of signs. Boil style. Solid fog jutsu. She didn't create a mist to hide them. She created a mist so dense, so corrosive, that it dissolved the very surface of the water, calming the waves in a wide corridor before them. It was a jutsu of immense power and control, a testament to her Kage-level skill. A path opened through the storm. "Go," she commanded. Kuritsuchi stomped her foot, and the stone platform surged forward. Propelled by jets of earth and rock, a makeshift island of stability in a world gone mad. They raced through the path May had carved, heading towards a sky that was growing unnaturally dark. Towards a sound that was becoming a physical pressure against their bodies. They were sailing into the mouth of oblivion, armed with nothing but a desperate hope and the iron will of three of the most powerful people on the planet. The Leviathan was waiting. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. Heart of the Maelstrom. The sea was a living mountain range in constant, violent motion. Waves, black and colossal, clawed at a sky bruised with the violet-gray light of the Leviathan's aura. Kuritsuchi's stone platform, a marvel of Earth-style engineering, bucked and groaned, shedding plates of rock chi were swallowed by the churning abyss below. She stood at its center, legs braced, her hands pressed flat against the stone, a grim expression of absolute concentration etched on her face. She was not merely piloting the craft. She was in a constant, brutal tug of war with the ocean, rebuilding the platform from the seabed up as fast as the sea could tear it apart. At the prow, Mai Terumi was a vision of deadly grace amidst the chaos. Her boil-style jutsu carved a path of eerie calm through the maelstrom, but the effort was immense. Steam billowed from her skin, and her breath came in ragged bursts. The Leviathan's passive energy field was actively fighting her, attempting to reclaim the water she pacified. It was a battle of Kage-level chakra control against a planetary force of nature. Naruto stood between them, a silent, golden anchor in the storm. His six-path sage mode was active, the truth-seeking orbs hovering behind him like dark, miniature moons. He wasn't fighting the sea or the sky. His senses were turned inward and downward, plunging deep into the crushing blackness of the ocean, towards the source of the dirge. He could feel it now, not as a distant tremor, but as a consciousness. It was ancient, slow, and utterly alien. It didn't think in words or images, but in sweeping tides of geologic time and pure, biological imperative. It felt the world above, the buzzing, chaotic energy of humanity, like a fever that had festered for millennia. "We're getting close," he yelled over the roar of the apocalypse. "Its energy is spiking. It knows we're here." As if in answer, the sea ahead of them erupted. It wasn't a wave, but a solid wall of water that rose 1,000 feet into the air, crowned with a host of colossal, writhing tentacles made of hyper-pressurized water. They were the Leviathan's antibodies. Its first line of defense. "I can't hold the path and fight those at the same time." May gasped, her control over the surrounding sea wavering. "Don't have to," Kuritsuchi roared, Earth-style. Flying Dragon Javelin. She tore a massive stalagmite of rock from the platform's foundation, shaped it into a 100-foot-long spear in midair, and hurled it with devastating force. The javelin, glowing with her chakra, punched a clean hole through one of the water tentacles, which dissolved back into the ocean with a hiss. But for every one she destroyed, 3 more rose to take its place. "It's a numbers game we can't win," Kuritsuchi grunted, already forming another javelin. "Then we stop playing," Naruto shouted. He flashed through a single-hand sign. Sage Art. Massive Rasengan Barrage. He didn't need clones. In his current state, he simply willed them into existence. A dozen giant, swirling spheres of golden sage chakra appeared in the air around him. He didn't launch them at the tentacles. He threw them down, into the ocean at the base of the colossal constructs. The explosions were immense, churning the sea into a boiling foam. They didn't destroy the tentacles. But the concussive force and the injection of pure, positive natural energy disrupted the Leviathan's control. The water constructs faltered, collapsing back into the sea. They had bought themselves a moment. The eye of the storm. Dead ahead, May shouted, pointing. Through the parting mist, they saw it. A perfect, circular patch of calm water, miles in diameter. The CW. Within it was as flat and reflective as black glass, a stark, terrifying contrast to the liquid chaos surrounding it. In the center of that calm, something was breaking the surface. It was not a head. It was not a body. It was a single, crystalline spire, glowing with a soft, internal violet light. It was a sensory organ, a nerve ending of the planet-sized creature, its only physical manifestation in their world. The dirge, the bone-shaking hum that had shaken continents, was emanating directly from it. That's it, Naruto breathed, his sage senses locking onto the spire. That's the heart. That's our target. Kuretsuchi pushed the platform into the circle of calm. The moment they crossed the threshold, the world went silent. The roar of the storm was cut off as if by a wall, leaving only the profound, soul-vibrating hum of the spire. The air was thick with an energy that made the hair on their arms stand up. My jutsu, Mei whispered, looking at her hands. I can't maintain it here. The natural energy is too dense. Too alien. It's overriding my chakra. Mine too, Kuretsuchi grunted. I can keep the platform afloat, but any offensive jutsu is out of the question. We're on our own. The platform drifted slowly towards the crystalline spire. As they drew closer, the water around the spire began to change. Shapes began to form, coalescing from the deep. They were smaller than the water tentacles, humanoid in shape, but made of the same dark, pressurized water. They were featureless, silent, and they rose from the depths by the thousands, an army of silent, soulless guardians. So it's not going to be that easy. Kuretsuchi sighed, cracking her knuckles. It never is, Naruto replied, a grim smile on his face. He looked at the two women who had followed him into the heart of the apocalypse. It's been an honor. Quote, Mei returned his smile, hers laced with a fatalistic, dangerous allure. The honor has been all mine, Lord Emperor. Try not to die. I haven't decided if I'm finished with you yet. The three of them leapt from the platform. The battle for the world's soul had begun. Kuretsuchi was a whirlwind of taijutsu. Deprived of her large-scale ninjutsu, she fell back on the brutal, close-quarters combat of Iwa. She tore a slab of stone from the platform, shattering it into two massive, gauntlet-like weapons. She was a stone titan, wading into the army of water guardians. Her every punch and kick shattering their forms, turning them back into inert water. But they were endless. For every one she destroyed, another took its place, their silent, relentless assault designed to wear her down. Mei was a ghost. She couldn't use her boil style, but her mastery of water style was second to none. She didn't fight the guardians, she became one of them. Water style. Liquid body technique. Her form dissolved, merging with the black water of the calm sea. She moved as a current, an unseen force, pulling the guardians down, disrupting their formations, turning the Leviathan's own element against it. It was a subtle, brilliant battle of attrition, but she was a single drop of will in an ocean of mindless purpose. Naruto ignored them all. He ran. He didn't fly. He ran across the surface of the water. A golden blur making a straight line for the central spire. The guardians converged on him, but he didn't stop to fight. He weaved through them, his truth seeking orbs forming a defensive shield around him, negating the guardians that got too close, dissolving them on contact. He was the tip of the spear, and Mei and Kuretsuchi were the shaft, buying him the precious seconds he needed. He reached the base of the crystal spire. It towered over him, humming with a power that vibrated in his teeth. He placed his palm against its smooth, cool surface, and plunged in. He wasn't in the ocean anymore. He was adrift in a sea of pure consciousness, a universe of slow, ancient, powerful thoughts. He saw the birth of the world, the cooling of the crust, the first stirrings of life. He felt the planet's joy at its own creation. Then he felt the wound. A shadow falling from the sky, a seed of alien energy that pierced the world's soul and began to drink. The God Tree. He felt the Leviathan's response. Not anger, but a deep, instinctual self-preservation. It had put itself to sleep, a deep, geologic hibernation, waiting for the wound to heal, for the foreign body to be purged. And now, waking after eons, it felt not a healed world, but a world covered in the scar tissue of the wound's legacy, chakra. Humanity. To the Leviathan, they were all just remnants of the initial violation. A persistent infection. Naruto understood. He didn't try to argue. He didn't try to reason. He simply opened himself up. He shared his own memories, his own feelings, not as an invader, but as an offering. He showed the Leviathan his own pain. The loneliness of his childhood. The ache for a friend. The sting of betrayal. He showed it the love for his teachers, the bonds with his comrades. He showed it the fierce, desperate struggle to protect his home, his people, his world. He shared the laughter around a campfire, the taste of ramen, the warmth of a hand in his. He showed it the vibrant, chaotic, beautiful, painful tapestry of human existence. He wasn't telling it that humanity was not a disease. He was showing it that they, too, were the world. That their energy, their chakra, was no longer a foreign substance, but had, over millennia, become a part of the planet's own lifeblood. They were the children of the wound, yes, but they were children of the world as well. He poured all of his will, his tak no jutsu, his unshakable belief in the connections between people, directly into the heart of the planetary consciousness. He was not asking it to spare them. He was asking it to accept them. For a timeless moment, there was nothing. Only the pressure of an entire world's consciousness weighing his own. He felt his own sense of self begin to dissolve, to be subsumed by the Leviathan's immense being. Then, he felt a change. A flicker of curiosity. A slow, ancient stirring of something other than biological imperative. The Leviathan was considering him. It was feeling his memories, his emotions, and in them, it was feeling a reflection of its own ancient loneliness. Outside, in the physical world, the humming of the spire began to change its pitch, softening from a dirge of sterilization to a low, resonant lullaby. The water guardians froze, their forms wavering. Kuritsuchi, her arms bruised and her breathing ragged, looked up from the enemy she was about to pummel. Mei solidified out of the water, her face etched with exhaustion and hope. The crystalline spire began to glow with a brilliant, warm golden light, Naruto's own energy, accepted and amplified by the Leviathan. The light spread outwards, a gentle wave of warmth and understanding across the surface of the black water. The storm clouds in the sky began to part, revealing the stars for the first time in days. The raging maelstrom surrounding the calm eye began to subside. The Leviathan was going back to sleep. Not in pained hibernation, but in peaceful slumber, accepting the new, noisy, vibrant life that now shared its world. Naruto was gently expelled from the spire, collapsing onto his knees on the surface of the now calm sea. His golden aura was gone, his chakra utterly depleted. He had poured every ounce of his being into that psychic conversation. Mei and Kuritsuchi rushed to his side, supporting him. "Did you?" Kuritsuchi started, her voice filled with awe. "I think so," Naruto whispered, a tired, triumphant smile on his face. "I think we're going to be okay." But as he looked up at the newly cleared sky, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A tiny, silver glint against the black, star-dusted velvet of space. It was moving impossibly fast, growing larger. It wasn't a star, it was a ship, a cold dread, far more personal and terrifying than the impersonal threat of the Leviathan. Washed over him, the Otsutsuki. While they were busy saving the world from itself, the threat from the heavens had not been idle. The silver ship stopped, hovering in the upper atmosphere, a silent, menacing star that did not belong. Then, a single figure detached from it, plummeting towards the planet like a vengeful angel, wreathed in an aura of pale, deathly white chakra. They had won, and their victory had just served as a dinner bell for the true gods of the void. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Falling Star. The calm was a fragile, crystalline thing. For a few precious seconds, the world held its breath. The sea was a mirror of the newly revealed stars. The Leviathan's dirge had softened into a sub-sonic planetary hum, and the three of them, Naruto, Mei, and Kuritsuchi, floated on the water's surface, exhausted but victorious. They had faced a literal apocalypse and soothed it with words and will. Then the star fell. It wasn't a meteor. It moved with a cold, predatory intelligence. Its descent not a chaotic tumble but a controlled, silent plunge. The pale, white aura surrounding it pulsed with a chakra so dense and alien it felt like a razor against Naruto's depleted senses. "What is that?" Kuritsuchi demanded, her body tensing, instinctively moving to shield Naruto. "The other hurricane," Naruto whispered, his voice hoarse. He couldn't take his eyes off the approaching figure. This was no scouting party. This was no distraction. This was a declaration. The figure slowed its descent, hovering 100 feet above them, the water's surface, dimpling under the pressure of its power. It was an Otsutsuki, but unlike Kage or the ghosts of his inherited memories, this one was terrifyingly real. He was tall and unnervingly regal, clad in flowing white robes adorned with black magatama. His skin was a stark, lifeless white, and two sharp, black horns protruded from his forehead, curving back over his immaculately styled, long silver hair. But it was his eyes that held the true terror. One was a golden, slit-pupiled Rinnegan, radiating a cosmic power that dwarfed any Naruto had ever felt. The other was a Byakugan, but its sclera was a menacing black. And its veins pulsed with a faint, crimson light. This was a being who had consumed countless worlds, and his boredom was more frightening than any rage. He looked down at them, not as warriors, but as insects. His gaze swept over the pacified sea, the lingering traces of the Leviathan's immense power, and finally settled on Naruto, the source of the golden energy that had just resonated across the planet. A flicker of something, mild surprise, perhaps even faint amusement, crossed his aristocratic features. "So," the Otsutsuki said, his voice echoing in their minds, a sound like shattering ice. It was not a language, but a direct transmission of thought, arrogant and absolute. "The fruit on this branch has ripened to an unexpected flavor." How curious. He gestured with a long-fingered hand. And one of Naruto's truth-seeking orbs, which had been hovering protectively behind him, wobbled and then shot towards the Otsutsuki's open palm. Naruto, in his weakened state, was powerless to stop it. The Otsutsuki examined the black sphere, turning it over in his hand as if it were a child's toy. "The power of the 10 tails, wielded by a native primate," he mused. "Hagoromo's little experiment seems to have gotten out of hand. A weed that thinks it is a flower." With a casual flick of his wrist, he crushed the truth-seeking orb. It imploded without a sound, a piece of Naruto's ultimate defense. A power that could negate all ninjutsu, erased from existence. A wave of absolute shock and horror washed over Mei and Kuretsuchi. This being had just effortlessly destroyed a power they had believed to be absolute. "Who are you?" Naruto demanded, forcing himself to his feet, swaying on the water's surface. Mei and Kuretsuchi flanked him, their exhaustion forgotten, replaced by a desperate, defiant adrenaline. The Otsutsuki's lips curved into a condescending smile. "I am Kinshiki Otsutsuki, and I am the gardener sent to prune this overgrown branch from our family's tree." Kagaya was a disobedient child who tried to hoard a harvest for herself. Her failure is an embarrassment that must be cleansed. And you, little weed, possess a chakra that does not belong to your kind. I have come to collect it. His gaze fell upon Mei and Kuretsuchi. "And it seems you have cultivated some interesting companions. Strong life forces. They will make for a fine appetizer." He raised his hand. From the golden Rinnegan, a torrent of black receivers shot forth, not like the rods Naruto used, but like 100 sleek, deadly javelins. "Look out!" Kuretsuchi yelled, slamming her hands on the water. Earth style. Stone Aegis. Even with her connection to the earth weakened by the ocean, she managed to pull a thick, domed shield of rock from the seabed. The black receivers slammed into it with sickening force, punching clean through the Kage-Level defense as if it were paper. The shield shattered. Mei reacted instantly, lava style. Melting apparition jutsu. She spewed a glob of acidic, molten lava, not at Kinshiki, but at the cloud of stone shrapnel in front of them. The superheated rock vaporized into a thick, obscuring cloud of steam and ash. They used the momentary cover to retreat, leaping back across the water. "We can't fight him," Kuretsuchi hissed, her arm bleeding where a shard of her own shield had cut her. "His power is on a completely different level. Running isn't an option," Naruto said, his mind racing. He was running on fumes, his chakra coils screaming in protest. He needed to buy time. "Conan," he projected with the last of his mental strength. "Do it, now." In the imperial capital, hundreds of miles away, Conan, who had been receiving the battle through her paper clone, did not hesitate. She slammed her hand down on a large, glowing seal in the center of the command room. "Activate the array." Back on the ocean, a massive, complex seal formula, miles in diameter, suddenly blazed to life on the surface of the water, centered on their location. It was a continent-wide network of seals Tsunade had been secretly developing, a strategic teleportation jutsu designed to move entire armies. It had never been tested. A pillar of blinding light erupted around them. Kinshiki paused his assault, a flicker of genuine surprise on his face. A primitive but clever trick. The world dissolved into a maelstrom of light and energy. When it reformed, they were no longer on the open ocean. They were standing in the center of the capital's main plaza, the teleportation arrays still glowing faintly at their feet. Imperial Shinobi, already scrambled by Conan's alert, surrounded them. Their weapons drawn. The air was filled with the shouts of alarm and the panicked faces of civilians. But they were not alone. Kinshiki stood 20 feet away, having been dragged along with them. The array having locked onto his immense chakra signature. He looked around at the city, the tall spires, the thousands of shinobi, with an expression of profound, almost comical, disdain. "You have brought me to your nest," he said, his voice echoing through the plaza. "A bold, and foolish, decision. Now the entire crop can be harvested at once." He raised his hand, and a weapon materialized from a swirling distortion in space. It was a colossal, red, chakra axe, crackling with crimson energy. "Tsunade," Naruto yelled. "Get the civilians out of here. Akane, coordinate the defense. This is not a battle to win. It's a battle to survive." Tsunade, already moving, barked orders, her voice cutting through the panic. "All units, containment protocol. Protect the shelters. Go." Akane, who had been commanding the coastal defense from the war room, was suddenly on the front line. She drew her katana, her face a mask of iron resolve. "Samurai battalions, form defensive phalanxes. Protect the shinobi medics. We are the wall." The battle for the imperial capital began. It was not a fight, it was a slaughter. Kinshiki moved with an effortless grace that belied his destructive power. He was a force of nature. Kuritsuchi's earth walls were shattered with a single swing of his axe. Mei's lava streams were absorbed and dissipated by his Rinnegan. Shinobi W. Ho charged him were swatted aside like flies, their jutsu nullified before they could even complete their hand signs. He wasn't even trying. He was toying with them, gauging their strength, his movements economical and dismissive. Naruto, running on pure adrenaline and the dregs of Kurama's chakra that was slowly beginning to replenish, knew he couldn't face him head-on. He had to be smarter. He created 1,000 shadow clones. They didn't attack. They swarmed the city, their purpose singular: rescue. They pulled civilians from crumbling buildings, shielded children with their own bodies, and reinforced evacuation routes. Naruto, the Emperor, had become Naruto, the Protector, his priority shifting from fighting the god to saving his people. "You hide behind your pathetic copies," Kinshiki sneered, vaporizing a squad of samurai with a casual blast of energy from his axe. "You are a king who refuses to fight for his own throne." He fixed his gaze on Naruto, ignoring everyone else. He sappered in a ripple of space and reappeared directly in front of him. Before Naruto could react, a blur of motion intercepted the attack. Akane. She had moved with impossible speed, her chakra infuse. Katana meeting Kinshiki's colossal axe. The sound was a deafening shriek of protesting metal. Akane's blade, a masterpiece of land of iron steel, held for a single, heart-stopping second against the divine weapon. Then it shattered into 1,000 pieces. The force of the blow sent her flying backward, crashing through a stone wall, her armor shredded. "Akane!" Naruto screamed. He saw red. The primal, protective fury that had driven him his entire life erupted. A cloak of vermilion chakra, dense and bubbling, enveloped him. The first tail of Kurama's power manifested behind him. It wasn't the controlled, golden power of Six Paths Sage Mode. This was raw, untamed rage. Raaaaah. He charged, a Rasengan forming in his hand, not of sage energy, but of raw, hateful chakra. Kinshiki met the charge with a bored expression. He raised his hand, his Rinnegan glowing. Almighty push. A wave of invisible, irresistible force slammed into Naruto. It wasn't like Pain's Shinra Tensei. It was absolute. Naruto felt every bone in his body scream in protest as he was hurled backward, the Rasengan dissolving, the chakra cloak ripped away from him. He crashed into the base of the central spire with enough force to crack the foundation. And slumped to the ground, broken and defeated. He lay there, his vision blurring, watching as Kinshiki advanced slowly, the red axe held loosely in his hand. He saw Kuritsuchi, bruised and battered, trying to form one last hand sign before being kicked aside. He saw Mei, half her body scalded by the blowback from one of her own jutsu, struggling to rise. He saw the faces of his shinobi. His people, filled with terror and despair. This was it. He had united the world only to deliver it into the hands of a true god. He had failed. Kinshiki stood over him, raising the axe for the final harvesting blow. A disappointing yield, the Otsutsuki commented, his voice flat. But a harvest is a harvest. As the crimson axe began its descent, a shadow fell over them. A massive, swirling portal of black and white energy ripped open in the sky directly above the plaza. It was a Yomatsu Hirasaka, the forbidden dimensional jutsu of Kage. A figure dropped from it, landing silently between Naruto and Kinshiki. The figure was cloaked and hooded, but the chakra signature was ancient, powerful, and chillingly familiar. The newcomer raised a hand, and the descending axe stopped dead. Inches from their palm, held in place by an unseen force. Kinshiki's bored expression finally vanished, replaced by one of genuine, absolute shock. He stared at the hooded figure, his golden rinnegan wide. "You," Kinshiki breathed, a trace of something akin to fear in his voice. "Impossible. You were sealed, exiled." The figure slowly lowered its hood. It was a face that should not exist. A face from a forgotten age. It had the pale skin and the Byakugan of the Otsutsuki, but it was marked with the subtle, intricate tattoos of a forgotten branch of the clan. It was a man, ancient and powerful, his eyes holding the wisdom and sorrow of millennia. "My cousin's little gardener seems to be making a mess in my mother's garden," the newcomer said, his voice a low, powerful rumble that resonated with the very stone of the plaza. He glanced down at the broken form of Naruto, a complex, unreadable expression in his Byakugan eyes. "It has been a long time, Kinshiki. I believe it is past time for the main family to remind the branches of their place." Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Unwritten Sun. Time seemed to fracture. The crimson axe hung in the air, its apocalyptic energy stilled by an invisible absolute authority. Kinshiki Otsutsuki, the gardener of worlds, the being who had contemptuously shattered a truth-seeking orb, stared at the hooded figure with the fur. Saint genuine emotion he had displayed, a mixture of disbelief and a deep, instinctual dread. "Amatsu," Kinshiki breathed, the name a poisoned shard of a forgotten history. "The exile. The unwritten. It cannot be." "My lord Ashiki confirmed your erasure." The man, Amatsu, gave a cold, dismissive smile. Ashiki was ever the ambitious one, arrogant enough to believe his will could rewrite the laws of causality. He erased the records. Kinshiki, not the man. Amatsu flexed his fingers. The colossal chakra axe in Kinshiki's hand dissolved, not in an explosion, but by being calmly and systematically unmade. Its crimson energy unraveled into inert particles, its physical form turning to dust that scattered in the wind. Kinshiki was left holding nothing. "My mother's power, twisted into a crude cudgel," Amatsu said with disdain. "You have learned nothing. You are still just a branch, reaching for a sun you cannot comprehend." For the first time, Kinshiki showed fear. He recoiled, raising his hands as if to ward off a blow. "The main family will hear of this. Your interference violates the highest laws of the clan." "I am the highest law of this world," Amatsu countered, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. He took a single step forward, and the very gravity in the plaza seemed to warp around him. Kinshiki was slammed to his knees, the ancient stones cracking beneath him under an impossible, invisible weight. "Go back to your master, little gardener," Amatsu commanded, his Byakugan glowing with a chilling intensity. "Tell him that the third son of Kage has returned. Tell him this world, this Seo, this seedling, is under my protection. Tell him to send a true Otsutsuki next time. If he dares." With a final, contemptuous push of his will, Amatsu released the pressure. Kinshiki gasped, scrambling backward through a hastily opened dimensional portal. The portal snapped shut, leaving behind only a profound silence and the scent of ozone. The god who had broken them had been dismissed like a disobedient child. The moment the immediate threat was gone, the carefully contained chaos erupted. Tsunade was the first to move, a blur of motion towards Naruto's crumpled form. "Medic teams, now, get him to the spire. I need a full diagnostic seal and a blood transfusion unit." Mei and Kuritsuchi were at her heels, their own injuries forgotten. Kuritsuchi stood guard over Naruto's body, her eyes sweeping the plaza. While Mei knelt, her hand hovering over Naruto's chest, feeling the faint, struggling flutter of his chakra network. Akane, meanwhile, pushed herself from the rubble, her left arm hanging at an unnatural angle, her armor erect. She ignored her own pain, her gaze locked on the new, terrifying variable in the equation, Amatsu. He stood calmly amidst the devastation he had indirectly halted, observing the frantic activity with a detached, almost academic curiosity. He was not a savior. He was an observer, and his inaction was as unnerving as Kinshiki's aggression. "Who are you?" Akane demanded, her voice strained but as unbending as ever. Her broken katana hilt was still clutched in her hand. Amatsu's gaze shifted to her. He took in her shattered blade, her broken arm, her defiant stance. A flicker of something, not quite respect, but perhaps acknowledgement, crossed his ancient features. "I am the ghost you did not know was haunting you." He watched as the medics carefully lifted Naruto onto a stretcher. He could see the damage, the shattered bones, the ruptured organs, the catastrophic chakra exhaustion. "The boy was dying. Your leader is a fool," Amatsu stated. His voice devoid of malice, a simple statement of fact. He expended the power of a star to soothe a restless planet, leaving himself a flickering candle in the path of a comet. An admirable sentiment, a strategically idiotic one. He saved the world, Kuritsuchi snarled, stepping between Amatsu and the retreating medical team. "Something you seem to have had no interest in doing until your clan rival showed up." "I am not interested in saving the world," Amatsu replied coolly. "I am interested in preserving a unique asset. You are components of that asset. Nothing more." Four women. Tsunade, having barked her final orders and now returning, her face a mask of cold fury, formed a loose, wary circle around the Otsutsuki newcomer. They were battered, bleeding, and exhausted. But they were the acting heads of a unified world, and their collective will was a palpable force. "You said Kagaya was your mother," Tsunade said, her voice dangerously low. "Hagoromo and Hamura were her sons. There was no mention of a third." "History is written by the victors," Amatsu said, a hint of ancient sorrow in his tone. "And my mother, in her madness, ensured I would not be among them. I was her firstborn. Before the god tree, before her obsession with chakra. I was born of her body, but not of the fruit's power. When she consumed it, when she became a goddess, she saw me as a relic. A reminder of a past she wished to erase. I argued against her plan to create an army of Zetsu. I saw the paranoia, the fear that drove her. For that dissent, she did not kill me. She did something crueler. She sealed me, outside of time, in a dimensional rift she created. An unwritten son, erased from the story. His story, whether true or not, hung in the air, resonating with a strange, tragic logic. It explained Kagaya's descent into madness, the hidden history of the Otsutsuki, and his own sudden appearance. The Leviathan's awakening, the global surge of natural energy, had weakened the seals of his prison enough for him to finally break free. "So you've come back to claim your inheritance?" Mei asked, her voice a silken, probing thing, testing him. "To rule the world your mother coveted." "Rule," Amatsu scoffed. "A king is merely the most prominent prisoner in his own kingdom. I have been a prisoner for millennia. I have no desire for a throne." He looked from face to face, his Byakugan seeming to peer into their very souls. "I offer a pact, a symbiosis." They followed him to the council chamber. The obsidian table was cracked, one wall of the spire blown open to the sky. But it was still their seat of power. "The Otsutsuki clan is not a race," he began, his voice echoing in the broken room. "It is a cosmic locust swarm. They will not stop." Kinshiki was merely a scout. His master, Ashiki, is a member of the main family, a being of immense power. And there are others. They will come for this world's chakra. They will drain it dry and move on. You cannot stop them. Your emperor, for all his power, is a child with a divine sword he barely knows how to wield. He nearly died fighting a single, low-ranking functionary. Every word was a cold, hard truth that they had just witnessed firsthand. "But this world is unique," Amatsu continued. "My mother's actions, her merging with the god tree, her creation of the 10 tails and its subsequent division by my broth. It did something the clan never intended. It fused Otsutsuki chakra with the planet's native life force. It created you, hybrids, a new form of life. You are, from the clan's perspective, a contamination, a heresy. But from my perspective, you are an opportunity. He leaned forward, his presence dominating the room. I can teach you. I can show you how to truly wield the power you possess. I can give you the knowledge to fight the clan, to hide this world from their sight, to sever it from their celestial map forever. I can help you survive. And in return, Kuritsuchi asked, her voice laced with suspicion. What's your price? Quote, my price, Amatsu said, his eyes glowing faintly, is the complete and total eradication of every remnant of Otsutsuki influence on this planet. The God Tree's husk, the Ghetto Mazo, the 10 Tails, every lingering trace of their parasitic technology. And finally, the tailed beasts themselves. The women recoiled as if struck. The Biju are not your allies, Amatsu stated, his voice cutting. They are living fragments of the 10 Tails. They are beacons. As long as their chakra exists in this world, the Otsutsuki will be able to sense it, to track it, to home in on it. They are the scent of blood in a sea of sharks. To be truly free, you must purge the very source of your power. You must cut out the heart of the heresy. It was a devil's bargain. To save their world, they would have to destroy the very beings Naruto had spent his entire life fighting to save, the beings he considered his friends. It was a choice so monstrous, so contrary to everything Naruto stood for, that it was unthinkable, and yet, the alternative was the absolute extinction they had just glimpsed in Kinshiki's cold eyes. You would have us commit genocide to prevent an invasion, Tsunade said. Her voice trembling with rage. I would have you amputate a limb to save the body, Amatsu corrected her. Your sentimentality is a luxury you can no longer afford. The debate was a firestorm of emotion and logic. They were trapped. Amatsu held all the cards. He was their only hope, and the price of that hope was their soul. Hours later, the decision was made. It was not a vote. It was a grim, silent consensus of leaders with no other choice. Mei was the one to find Naruto. He was awake, lying in the spire's most advanced medical bay. His body was a patchwork of glowing green healing jutsu. But the damage was profound. He turned his head as she entered, his eyes dull with pain and fatigue. Mei, he rasped. What happened? Akane. Kuritsuchi. They're alive, she said softly. Sitting on the edge of his bed. She took his hand. It was cold. Everyone is alive. The Otsutsuki is gone. A flicker of relief crossed his face, followed by confusion. Gone. How? I couldn't even touch him. And so, she told him. She told him about the unwritten sun, Amatsu. She told him about his impossible power, his ancient story, and the pact he had offered them. She told him the price of their survival. As she spoke, she watched the life drain from Naruto's eyes. The pain of his physical injuries was nothing compared to the agony that twisted his features as he understood the choice they had made in his name. The Biju, Kurama, Gyuki, Shukaku, his friends, his family. No, he whispered, his voice cracking. He tried to sit up, a surge of desperate energy moving through him. No, we can't. There has to be another way. There isn't, Naruto, Mei said, her voice gentle but firm, her grip on his hand tightening. We looked at the abyss, and it looked back. This is the only path that leads to tomorrow. He stared at her, at this woman he respected, this woman he was beginning to feel something deeper for. He saw the pain in her own eyes, the self-loathing at the bargain she had been forced to strike. He saw the faces of Kuritsuchi, Tsunade, Akane, all of them forced to betray the very ideals he had taught them to believe in. He had saved the world from the Leviathan's wrath only to be broken by a god. And in his moment of weakness, his closest allies had been forced to sell his soul to a devil to keep him alive. The physical defeat was nothing. This was true despair. Chapter 9 End.